Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Oh, work it out. You work it out for Mother Teresa. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Oh, work it out. You work it out for Mother Teresa.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and we got a sponsored stream today. A special thank you goes out to our brother Gordon over in Germany. God bless you, brother. Hope you're doing well. In which he requested that I dive into and do a sort of orthodox refutation of the Buddhist concept of Anatman. Now, you may have heard this before. It is essentially the rejection of the existence of a soul. In Sanskrit and beginning in the Vedas and then more defined in the Upanishads, they have a concept of the Atman, the soul. And this soul is the thing that is reincarnating through samsara, attempting to attain full liberation of moksha in the Hindu system. And so Buddhism and what we're told that the Buddha said. I mean, how many of you guys did you guys know that the Pali Canon, the oldest we know of written text for Buddhism, was actually written 400 to 500 years after the Buddha? Did you guys know that? I think a lot of people don't recognize that, because you hear people criticize Christianity about, oh my gosh, all these all these gospels were written after Christ. I mean, how reliable are they? Well, they're written what, 30 to 60 years after Christ by the people who actually knew him personally. And Buddhism, the Pali Canon, wasn't written until 400 to 500 years after the death of the Buddha. And by that time, it had already split up into 18 different schools that were, in many cases, mutually exclusive, meaning they were making explicit claims that would not correlate between the different traditions and schools. So I think most people just aren't fully aware of that, to be honest. But this idea of no self, that there's no there, this rejection of what we would call in philosophy substance ontology, this is kind of the basis for Buddhism. And so today I have a bit of an opening monologue. I got a bunch of notes here. You'll see that I'm going to lay out the 5 philosophical dimensions where Buddhism basically just comes up short because of the affirmative declaration of the Anatman. As we'll talk about, I mean, they reject essentially the things that we would consider essential for a worldview: epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, aesthetics, and soteriology. So I'm going to get into that. We'll talk a little bit about the philosophy. And I'm going to then discuss why this concept of no self, why it is actually so popular in the West, because it actually conforms to much of sort of secular science. Neuroscience itself has this idea that the mind, or the sense of self, the sense of the I, is an emergent function of brain activity. And this is essentially what Buddhism is claiming. As we'll talk about, there's a postmodern connection. Postmodernism, regarding their philosophy of intersectionalism, believes that the concept of self is the intersection of sort of linguistic processes, power structures, and social status, social modalities. And so Buddhism is actually very similar. So I got a handful of points to talk about why this Anatman is so popular in the New Age, psychedelic spirituality, various Western forms of Eastern mysticism. And then I have like a handful. I have 3 specific debate questions that if you're going to debate somebody who's interested in this Anatman concept, things that they essentially couldn't answer. And so that's going to be a very short sort of intro monologue today. And then I got a bunch of videos. So it's going to be actually quite fun. We're going to be watching some of the prominent people who speak about this. So I got videos lined up of the Dalai Lama, a Buddhist monk, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Sam Harris. And there's a couple individuals in specific that Gordon wanted me to check out in preparation for today's stream. So I looked at a few of the gentlemen. They had smaller YouTube channels, and some of them didn't have, like, it was, one of them was on psychedelics and this concept of no self, but it was just a static image, and it was like an hour and a half interview. So I tried to find actual like clips that would be poignant for today's discussion. So much of the stream today is actually just going to be a sort of commentary on videos, and we can actually see. So my goal is to steel man this concept for you guys. I do have a study guide document. We're not going to spend too much time on it if you're interested, because there is a section, it gets a little bit in the weeds regarding Buddhist theology and the origins of this concept. But once we get through the opening monologue, I may show you guys a few things. I put together some actually pretty cool graphs showing, like, for example, the reliability of Buddhist scriptures compared to Christian scriptures. So many skeptics want to question, for example, Sam Harris, right? So Sam Harris is an atheist materialist. And I'm going to show you after the opening monologue why somebody like a Sam Harris would find Buddhist concepts of the no self so appealing. And the title for today, that it's a lie, the reason why it's a lie is because if it's true, there's no possibility for knowledge. And so, one of the questions that I'm going to be posing over and over today's stream is if there is no self, who knows that there is no self? It's sort of a conundrum that the Buddhist paradigm really can't wrap itself around or answer fully. And this is just a major hurdle in regards to the legitimacy of such a worldview. So anyways, today's going to be a fun stream. I just have a quick little opening monologue, and then much of it is actually going to be diving into, like, I really look forward to looking at the Alan Watts stuff, Ram Dass, if you guys have seen that. And I would imagine for many of you guys, did any of you in the chat, let me know in the chat right now for everybody who's here, were you guys into some of this Eastern mysticism stuff? Because I know I got into it at one point. Like at one point, I remember Buddhism was very fascinating to me when I first took my intro to religious studies course. So, once my sort of naive Protestant Methodist upbringing was shattered by an academic study on the Bible, a course that I took, I kind of had I didn't identify as Christian anymore. I saw at that point, the correlations between the Epic of Gilgamesh and the multiple authorship theory of the New Testament, things like this that really just kind of shook my naive faith. And I remember seeing the temples and the aesthetics of Hinduism and Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. Didn't know much about that. And so Buddhism was always something that I thought was kind of cool. And I would say during my early 20s and even throughout much of the psychedelic phase that I was in, I don't know if I fully adopted a sort of Anatman concept, but certainly a sort of Eastern mystical framework. And he says, I took LSD and hated it. That's about it. Well, as we'll talk, I have a video of Sam Harris today. And Sam Harris is going to be talking about his experience of ego death while tripping on LSD and psilocybin mushrooms. So, you're not the only one. And part of what I wanted to, I'll address today is that psychedelic spirituality has totally adopted this. Although I was in preparation watching videos from various, psychonauts promoting this worldview. And what I found was many of them do promote this idea of ego death, that psychedelic enlightenment is sort of this realization that you're not really who you think you are in historic time. But then there are others that speak of like the soul. And so these are mutually exclusive claims. Like you either have a soul or you don't have a soul. The Anatman, the no self concept of Buddhism, is explicitly saying, yeah, there is no soul. So anyways, again, a major thank you to Gordon for sponsoring today's stream. Really appreciate you, brother. And I hope you enjoy everything we get into. Heidi says, I totally let go of self while being utterly numberalistic. I don't even know what that word means. Numberalistic. Heidi, you stumped me there. I'm not even sure. You have to tell me in the chat what exactly that means. Thomas says, no, but a friend of mine at church used to be into that new age hoodoo, drugs and all that. Yeah, I mean, it'll sucker you in. It'll sucker you in. And, we have one video today of a guy, and it's, shout out to Gordon. He's the one that sent this to me. I probably wouldn't have been able to find it through just looking online, but he's written a book on basically how to become enlightened. And we're going to watch the section. We're not going to watch the whole interview. It's like an hour and a half or something. But he's on a YouTube channel that's over like 2 million subs. And the first question of the interview was basically the host asking him, like, what's it like to be enlightened? And so he's talking about his Buddhist meditative practices. This is a Western white guy describing how he's enlightened. And I thought, watching it, oh my gosh, the irony, because Buddha himself, the whole point of the Four Noble Truths is that suffering has to do with desire. And this guy is desiring to be known on a major podcast, writing books, desiring to change the minds of other people, and then, and then publicly identifying as someone who's enlightened. I was thinking, who knows what the Buddha actually taught, because the Pali Canon came so many years later after the life. I mean, and even critical scholars have addressed this. People that are very sympathetic actually to Buddhism is that we don't know based on the Pali Canon, and there's many Buddhist texts, right? So Buddhism, one of the misnomers is that when we say Buddhism, it is referring to one static thing. You have Theravada, the lesser vehicle, Mahayana, the greater vehicle, Vajrayana, the tantric vehicle. That's what Tibetan Buddhism is. You have Pure Land Buddhism, Chan Buddhism in China, Zen Buddhism in Japan, and all of them kind of have their own cultural flavors based on the cultures that they're interacting with. Shintoism in Japan, Taoism, Confucianism in China, this type of stuff. So even to talk about Buddhism in great general terms, that's what I'm going to attempt to do today by just focusing on the concept of the Anatman, because that is something that sort of unites all of these different traditions, these desperate traditions, but they have tons and tons of texts. But I think most people don't even realize that we really cannot historically, depend on the historical reliability of the Pali Canon, because we are to believe that an oral tradition was maintained for 400 to 500 years that was then written down. However, by that time, as I said, there was at least 18 different Buddhist schools at that point. So do we actually know what the Buddha actually taught? To me, that's a legitimate question most people really don't address or deal with. They just assume, So, Big Man said, yep, went to a Theravada Buddhist place for a while. I never did any Buddhist rituals. I have been to a Buddhist temple. I liked some of the aesthetics of Buddhism. And when I was really deep into the psychedelics, I was a little bit more interested in Tibetan Buddhism. So Tibetan Buddhism actually claims the existence of gods, right? So generally speaking, we would refer to Buddhism as sort of an atheistic framework. And when you're talking about the majority of Buddhism, I would say that's absolutely true. But once you start getting into Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama and the various Vajrayana traditions, even in Mongolia, they actually posit multiple deities, multiple gods. They perform rituals that contact them. And so, like I said, these cosmologies and these paradigms, even though they're all Buddhism and they do make similar claims regarding the Four Noble Truths, the life is suffering, that's the first noble truth. The second truth is that suffering arises from desire. The third one is that if you end desire, you can end suffering. Third noble truth. Fourth noble truth, if you want to end desire, then you must follow the Eightfold Path. Then they have 8 prescripts of what exactly you should do to end suffering. And so, yeah, that's basically one of the few things that hold all these things together. Anyways, so I apologize for you, brother, if you wasted some time in a Theravada Buddhist sect or tradition or going to a temple, but maybe it was good life experience, And so I think for a lot of us, we've kind of been exposed to these ideas. But my goal today, at least in this opening monologue here, is to really demonstrate that this worldview really isn't that strong. And because, as I'm getting ready to highlight, there is no epistemology, there is no true metaphysics, there is no true ethics, there is no true aesthetics, and there really is no true soteriology. I was thinking, how the heck would you even debate someone who wanted to say, no, I believe that there is no self. There is no self. There is no self there. The rejecting substance ontology. It'd be really difficult because I'm going to make arguments that appeal to the laws of logic, right? The inability to make knowledge claims. But if you were, I could imagine if you were going to be super duper consistent as some type of new age, Western Buddhist hybrid type, they would just say, yeah, well, the logic itself is part of the mind. It's part of our perception of reality, because Buddhism says that essentially what you are is an aggregate of 5 dimensions: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. This is what arises as the person. And through these 5 aggregates, this is where you get your false sense of self. Well, if that is true, again, they really can't even make claims saying that there is no. It's like somebody saying, truth doesn't exist. Well, you claiming that truth doesn't exist is a truth claim, right? And so Buddhism makes all these knowledge claims. And even when you look at the Eightfold Path, they're making moral prescripts on how exactly you become enlightened and illuminated. But their own worldview, there is no metaphysical structure because they reject substance ontology. And what do I mean by that is they legitimately reject there's any substance to anything, right? The innateness of all objects and beings is emptiness. And so if that's the case, what the heck, why should we follow any moral prescript or not? It doesn't really make sense. It really doesn't follow. So shout out to Jay. Yeah, new studio, brother. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. Shout out to Dyer. Looking forward to hanging out with you and Jamie, brother, down in Florida. Yeah, Buddhism is constantly begging the question. The entire paradigm of Buddhism is sort of begging the question. And so here's my opening monologue. So if you're going to analyze Buddhism, obviously in my study guide here, my document, I have specific theological refutations against Buddhism, but even because this concept of no self and the Anatman is so common among secular Western people because of the state of contemporary neuroscience, the history of phenomenology, we'll get into that. I mean, Hume's bundle theory of what the self is very, very similar to the five aggregates of Buddhism. So just based on philosophical grounds here, this is what I came up with, is that Buddhism in general, but anybody who claims that there is no self, there is no soul, rejects the possibility of knowledge itself because there is no knower, right? Who exactly knows something if there is no substance or nature or essence to the individual? No knowledge means that it leads to total skepticism. And that's why I think the irony is, one of the most famous skeptics of all time, David Hume, then develops his own sort of bundle theory, his anthropological understanding of what a person is. Basically all you are is a bundle of perceptions and sensations. And through those bundle of perceptions and sensations that are moving through space and time due to causation, you feel like you have a sense of self. That's actually exactly what Buddhism highlights. So, Hume, 1739, a treatise on human nature, is literally saying that the person is not a metaphysical soul. And he's also rejecting the Cartesian understanding of a thinking self. And he's positing that all you are is just a bundle of perceptions. And so the continuity as construction, both Buddhism and Hume, or this bundle theory, see personal identity as mental constructs. Everything's a mental construct. Buddhism explicitly, if you're going to take their paradigm at face value, is very Kantian in the sense that you cannot make knowledge claims about the exterior world. You can't. And in fact, there's no person to even know the knowledge claims in the first place because there is no self. It's an illusion. The idea of the self is a total illusion. And so empiricism is kind of the only method that both of these traditions have, whether it be, total Western skepticism, Humean type perspective, or Buddhism, because only what is immediately given is real. Only what you can immediately sense and perceive is real. And in that sense, Humean skepticism and his bundle theory totally aligns with the Buddhist concept of the Anatman. The second one is their metaphysics. Now, obviously, when you read Buddhist text and Buddhism, generally speaking, they're describing a lot of metaphysical stuff. But when you get down to brass tacks, right, asking them, okay, define metaphysical reality itself, they're going to come to the same point that they talk about the self. It's an illusion. And so there is no enduring being, right? Metaphysics, when we talked about Parmenides and Heraclitus, had to do with ontology, concepts of being. What is the primordial unifying principle of reality? Well, Buddhism says it's emptiness. There is no unifying principle. And if that is the case, if no enduring being, there's no ground for identity, meaning, or order. All of that stuff is thrown out the window. And so that's one of the ironies, is that, it nullifies the law of non-contradiction. Buddhism on face value is filled with logical fallacies. And so, that's why, having gone into that stuff in my early 20s and now 36 years old, Orthodox Christian, I look back at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, anybody who's really taking things, philosophy seriously, ideas, theology, my gosh, how do you warp yourself into such a point where you can't make claims about anything? And one of the sad things, I was watching a video of this female. So this is a woman from America, a white woman who got really into transcendental meditation, decided that she wanted to be Buddhist, and then actually went to join a monastery in Asia. She got there, and of course they shave her head, she gets her robe, all this stuff. And then she tells them, oh, can I forget if it was the phone or the internet. She wanted to contact her children. I don't know what method she was going to use, but she had children, and they're in high school. These weren't, super young, but exactly, they weren't, adults in the world. She had high school kids. She wanted to contact them. She left her husband, she left her children to go become a Buddhist monk. And what did the monastery say? Whoa, 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 you're a monastic now. You have to renounce all of that stuff. To follow the Buddha means to renounce the entirety of the world. And so she signed up, and she was crying. This was in an interview, and she was still at the monastery, so she was still a Buddhist monk or a nun, however you want to frame it. But she was crying, be like, "Oh my gosh, I saw how attached I still was to the world, and it broke my heart that I could no longer contact my family and my children." I'm thinking, how pathetic! How pathetic! You have high school kids, and you are renouncing them and choosing not to contact them because you want to be enlightened through, this Buddhist paradigm, these Buddhist spiritual practices, the Eightfold Path. Man, that's pretty sad. And so, one of the things that I kind of put together is that the Buddha renounced the world to escape suffering. Right. So because desire in Buddhist concept leads to suffering, you must renounce attachments to everything. That includes your family, and that includes the identity of yourself. And I wrote down that Christ entered the world to redeem it. The former dissolves self into emptiness, the Buddha. The latter, Christ, fulfills the self in eternal love. And so Buddha may identify a symptom of suffering, meaning desire. Yeah, if you desire a lot of things, you're probably going to suffer. I mean, that makes logical sense. But in Orthodoxy, we're claiming that suffering actually comes from separation from God, because, as we'll see, our worldview is entirely a communal structure based on persons, right? So the foundational premises between an Orthodox Christian paradigm and Buddhism, just totally, totally separate. This is why ecumenism, or the idea that all religions lead to the same path, how could it? On basically every claim, epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, aesthetics, soteriology, these are entirely different paradigms and worldviews. And so if we look at ethics, for example, no agent, the Anatman concept, whether it be New Age, psychedelics, or Buddhism, says that there's no moral agent there. There's no moral agent, therefore there's no responsibility. Therefore, virtue and sin lose all meaning. All meaning. Virtue and sin, good and evil, just becomes momentary preferences. Because how, in this paradigm, when you have no epistemology and no metaphysics, how can you make universal moral claims? You can't, obviously. And in that sense, you just resort back to a sort of preference worldview. You get to choose and pick everything that you believe and what you do. And there really is no ultimatum against it. Aesthetics, same thing. There's no subject, no beauty, only conditioned preference. So same thing for morality and ethics, same thing for aesthetics itself. It's just preference. They can't make objective claims about any of this stuff. And then soteriology, the way that I framed it, maybe this is a bit harsh or kind of over the top, but I said their salvation equals extinction. And this is why Orthodox Christianity warns so much about this Anatman concept, is because your soul is something that's made in the image of God. The choices you make are important. The metaphysics of being align us, being made in the image of God, back to God. Christ, the second person, the Logos, entered historic time to save us, to redeem the world, to bring the world closer to divine nature. He is truth. Truth is incarnate as Christ. Truth is a who, not a what. So salvation for in this Anatman concept truly is the extinction of the self. It's the annihilation of the imago Dei. And in that sense, Anatman, no self, Buddhism is demonic. It has to be demonic. Now, I'm not saying every person who believes in these concepts are possessed by a demon, obviously. However, obviously, if you believe that you need to renounce your connections to all people, all friends, all family, all children, all civic responsibility, there's no reason to participate in civic life. You have no moral duty to the people around you. The whole point then is to come to this quote unquote realization that you are not the self that you think you are. And once you realize the emptiness of all things, shunyata, you can then realize that there is no there. You're a tumbleweed moving through samsara, reincarnation, and really all that's reincarnating in this Buddhist concept. And even that, right? So if you really want to push, like if you believe in this no self samsaric worldview where you're reincarnating multiple times because you haven't burned off the bad karma yet, what is reincarnating? Who is the sense of self? And so even then, I would argue that in the Abhidharma, the classical Abhidharma tradition, Buddhism still sneaks in a sort of mini self, a mini sense of I, because who the hell is reincarnating trying to burn off the detritus of their karma? I know, like one of the analogies for Buddhist reincarnation is that you're a tumbleweed. There, a tumbleweed has no center. It just has all these weeds around the edge, and it's blowing and rolling on the ground by the wind. Well, they argue that's essentially what you are, and there is no there. And the more you do good deeds, even though they have no metaphysical or epistemological basis to make these claims, then you sort of pick away at the weeds of the tumbleweed until the tumbleweed falls apart. There's nothing there. And that for them is enlightenment. So soteriology for the Buddhists is literally extinction, the ultimate affirmation of non-being. And I can't think of anything that's more demonic than that. Doesn't mean there aren't true things that you can find in Buddhism that may correlate with orthodoxy. Doesn't mean that every person who believes these ideas are evil. But the idea itself is satanic from an Orthodox Christian perspective because it totally nullifies the imago Dei, which is the whole point of theosis. The whole point of God's creation is so that we can commune with him to become something greater than the created status that we were born into, to unite with him through communion and love. So why are these ideas then becoming popular in the secular West? Well, I had a few reasons. First one is phenomenalism. Both Buddhist and Western models restrict knowledge to phenomena. And we talked about this with Father Deacon Dr. Ananias and our stream on is academic philosophy dead? And we were talking about that Kant's critique of reason, what is referred to as the Kantian turn, truly was a sort of Copernican revolution in philosophy. Because after Kant, the question then comes is what can we know? Because at that point they're saying the exterior world is unknowable in and of itself. This is why we are not Kantians, even though, some of us may appreciate the tag, Dyer, myself, FDA. We like the tag argument. I think if you actually can follow the argument, it's by far the strongest argument for Christianity. You can even take, as we talked about in our 30 arguments for Christian apologetics, you can take some of the more foundationalist and classical arguments and kind of reformulate them into a sort of tag formation. But the reason that tag is so strong is because the state of philosophy right now is still trying to deal with the fact that they can't make ultimate knowledge claims. And that's where FDNA and I talked about how this has to do with part of the Enlightenment project, and that the only way for philosophy to sort of redeem itself is essentially move back into a pre-modern framework. And so the self exists conventionally and not ultimately. This is exactly what sort of modern philosophy, or at least these secular ideologies in the West, believe that you're an epiphenomenal project, that you emerge due to the interactions of your neurons in your brain chemistry, that there is no thing in of itself, there's only patterns. And so therefore, in regards to phenomenalism, we need to study the patterns, and that the pattern somehow then will lead us towards truth and full understanding. Another one I would argue is process ontology. As I said, Buddhism, or anybody who claims this idea of no self, no soul, what they do is they replace substance ontology. For those of you who don't know substance ontology, we're talking about the idea that there's substances, essences, natures into things. Maybe you could talk about a logos, logi understanding of reality. But process ontology, processes replace substance. And that's exactly what Buddhism argues. So reality is simply a process of events and relations. That's all there is, i.e. sort of Whitehead's process philosophy, if you're familiar with that. Postmodernism, as I mentioned, postmodernism and social constructivism. Self is a linguistic and cultural construct, intersection of linguistic discourse, power relations, and social roles. Well, that's exactly what Buddhism's arguing. So right there, we see that the phenomenal basis of modern Western philosophy, process ontology, postmodernism, and social constructivism, all these three things all align with the Buddhist paradigm. Of course, neuroscience and various philosophical schools are going to appeal back to Buddhism as some type of historical legitimacy, because they have correlates due to the skepticism of reality that they both are enshrined in. And so postmodernism, Buddhism similarly treats self as a conceptual imputation dependent upon language and convention. This is why Judith Butler, if you're familiar with the her gender theories, that performative gender, that gender is really a linguistic and cultural performance, right? So your identity, this is where it gets back into the postmodernism and social constructivism. There is no, for them, there is no there, right? There is no man nature. There is no human nature, human substance. What you are is a composite, or what they would refer to as an intersection of linguistic discourse, power structures, and social roles. And where you fit in that sort of trifecta is the identity that you think that you are. And because you think you are it. And this is why she argues that if you're a man with a dick, you can just tuck it between your legs and put on a dress, put on makeup, put on a wig. And as long as you are performatively and linguistically presenting yourself as a woman, you are, because that's your identity, because they've already rejected substance ontology. There's no there. Well, Buddhism is the exact same thing. You can literally find teachers talking about how the self is a linguistic cultural phenomenon, exactly like the social constructivists and the postmodernists. Neuroscience, for example, views the self as an emergent function. I've already mentioned this. And I found a quote doing research for today that Daniel Dennett, I don't even know how many people still listen to him. It's kind of like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. Are they even still culturally relevant? Is Daniel Dennett still culturally relevant? I remember in the early 2000s, like Big Think and TED Talks, like Daniel Dennett was a huge, the skeptic atheist that is going to put all the Christians in their place. Like, these people aren't even culturally relevant anymore. I made this comment to somebody. Oh, I think it was Anthony Westgate, when I was over on his channel, is about one of the hard things about writing a book is you want to write something that's relevant in 10 to 20 years. And my point is, like, who is still reading Steven Pinker? Who's reading Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, and Sam Harris in 2025? Like, the culture, the momentum, everything has moved so beyond. These people aren't even relevant anymore. However, I digress. My point that I was making is that I found a quote from Daniel Dennett in preparation for. Yeah, Daniel Dennett published a book named Consciousness Explained. Although he's a determinist. Oh, did Daniel Dennett die? I was not aware. He was the 6th most popular new atheist in 2006. Anyways, I found a quote from Daniel Dennett. This is my point about neuroscience, because I would argue, at least in, how would I frame it? Many of the different schools of neuroscience, they are very similar. Any school. So you have identity theory, functionalism, substrate independence theory, all these different things. If you believe in the mind is an emergent phenomenon, therefore the sense of I is an emergent phenomenon, the self is an emergent phenomenon, which many neuroscientists argue. This is not crazy. Many neuroscientists argue this. If that's the case that you're making, well, then obviously it coincides very well with Buddhism. But anyways, Daniel Dennett had this quote that I found, that the self is what he referred to as, quote, this is based on neuroscientific research, right? He's appealing to the science. The self is a narrative center of gravity that neuroscience has come to understand as an emergent function. It's the narrative center of gravity. So again, just like I said, that's neuroscience. But what it just described, the linguistic self, is exactly what the postmodernists and the social constructivists do. Now, typically, the postmodernists and the STEM programs hate each other. But here we find that the neuroscientists, or the new atheist and Daniel Dennett, is saying exactly what Judith Butler is saying, which is saying exactly what Buddhism is saying. Of course, we don't know what the Buddha said, because, as I already highlighted, the Pali Canon didn't exist until 400 to 500 years after the Buddha. And so what leads to all this, so the fact that Western civilization has gone through this, the Kantian turn, the collapse of epistemology, the questioning of metaphysics and ethics, the replacement of substance with process ontology, process philosophy, even process theology. Some people actually, I've seen some Catholics argue for process theology. And then the postmodernists, the social constructivists, all this leads to is a loss of transcendence. And we can see that the state of Western civilization, the meaning crisis, all this different stuff, the loss of identity. Notice how the West is moving into a dimension that is very akin to the prescripts of Buddhism itself. And so God and soul, I'm arguing that in this loss of transcendence, God and soul is null and void, and it's just replaced with process, Darwinian mechanics, Darwinian macroevolution, cosmology, social construction, whatever it may. What process you want to pick, here's the secret, guys. All of these Western schools are replacing God and soul, nature, substance, with process, and then they can replace it with whatever process they want. Foucault's, power knowledge, that those who deem what is true are the true power, another process, right? So therefore we need to take over the institutions, the sort of Gramsci's march through the institutions, so that we can then create a new process of social formation. Okay. Now, if I were to debate a Buddhist, it'd be very difficult, because if they're truly like a monk or something, they're not going to appeal to logic, right? So really, I would say it's almost impossible to debate one of them unless you get like one of these Westerners that is like appealing to logic and the laws of logic and all this stuff, but then still claiming that they're like some Buddhist or upholding, I'm part of the Mahayana tradition. It's going to be hard to get them to come down on anything concrete. However, here's the 3 questions that I think essentially just take the legs out of this Anatman no self theory. The first one being, who knows that there is no knowledge and no self, right? Who's making the knowledge claim? And this is, we're going to watch videos. I mean, Ram Dass, Alan Watts, I got a handful of Buddhist monks that we're going to take a look at. What do they say? Well, the self is an illusion. And once you come to know that it's an illusion, then you become enlightened. Well, who the hell's learning that it's an illusion? You just said there is no self there. I mean, it's a total oxymoron. It's a paradox. So you're telling me that There is no self, but once the self knows there's no self, then the self is liberated into emptiness. What the hell? How does that make any sense? It's essentially an epistemic self-refutation. That's what I would argue. That the lack of a true epistemology in Buddhism, due to the proclamations of the soul itself, meaning that there is no soul, that they can't even make a truth claim without epistemic self-refutation. Therefore, if we are going to be consistent in debate, they lose. They need to demonstrate how they're not self-refuting themselves every time they make a knowledge claim, saying that there is no self to know anything, and I know this. Well, how the hell do you know this? You can't. So there's my first question, that if they were going to be on, I'd be curious how they would respond to that. Number two, how can Buddhism speak of right and wrong action if there is no moral subject? The Buddha, for example, the reason why he developed Buddhism and rejected Hinduism is because he saw sickness and he saw poverty and he saw death, and his dad wanted to shield the prince, Siddhartha Gautama, from all the suffering of the world. But then once Siddhartha saw it, all the lovely concubines weren't enough, and his mind just kept questioning and searching for answers, until he realized that he needed to renounce his kingdomship and he needed to wander through the Indian landscape so that he could come to full knowledge under the Bodhi tree. Okay, well, what is the point about the poor man, the sick man, and the dead man when there is no subject to actually make, an objective moral structure? Who cares? Right now, I'm not saying who cares. Christianity tells us we need to care for the sick, we need to care for the poor, and we need to mourn the dead. But we actually have a personhood. We actually have a theology that maintains metaphysics. The Logos is truth incarnate. Christ is truth incarnate. The Logos is our metaphysical reality. Following Christ is the basis for morals and ethics. Following him is our soteriology, and anything that aligns with our Logos metaphysics will truly be beautiful. So we have an aesthetics. How can Buddhism speak of right and wrong action if there is no moral subject? They can't. It's a moral contradiction. So I would say in an actual formal debate, that'd be a devastating blow. If they're trying to talk about how, Christianity did this or that. One of the interesting things, I've mentioned this before. There's a book called the Jesus Sutras. I actually have it right here. It's by Martin Palmer. I don't know. A long time ago, I did a stream on this. I may do it another one. So this book, Rediscovering the Lost Religion of Taoist Christianity, not Orthodox, right? This is not an Orthodox text. What's interesting about it is that Martin Palmer is an Anglican who was able to do research in China, and he discovered this thing right here. It's the Daqing Pagoda in Xi'an, China. And Xi'an used to be the capital city at the time of the Tang Dynasty, okay? And the Tang Dynasty was Taoist, by the way. But the Church of the East, if you're familiar, the Church of the East, it has an historian Christology. It spread before the rise of Islam. It basically was dominating the what we consider the Middle East or Western Asia. And it went all the way over until it hit China. And this is in like the mid 600s. So this is right around the time, early 600s to mid 600s. So right around the time of Muhammad, right where Islam, is getting ready to really make a rise in the Middle East. Christianity arrives in China under the Tang Emperor, and he describes Christianity as the religion of light. Now, one of the interesting things that Martin Palmer highlights in this book is one of the reasons why the Tang Emperor actually privileged Christianity over Buddhism at that point in China. So the state religion was Taoism and Confucianism, but he gave them their own pagoda next to where the emperor ruled, and it was filled, and it looks almost Orthodox. It's not. It's an historian. It's more Oriental, but it's filled with icons. Icons are all over the inside of this pagoda. Is because Buddhists were actually committing slavery. So Buddhism was spreading at that time in China. We're talking about the 600s. And the way that they were building their monasteries, like the Shaolin monks, right? The Shaolin temple, where we get Kung Fu and stuff. Many of these Buddhist monasteries were built by slave labor, because the Buddhists themselves, of course, don't view the slave as having any sort of substance or essence. And that's just kind of their functional duty. And they just need to burn their karma off while they're getting, whipped while they're carrying bricks to build the Buddhist monastery. And so even the Tang Taoist emperor viewed a moral and ethical difference between Christianity. Now, this is the Church of the East, but the Church of the East and Buddhism at the time, because the Christians were outspoken against slavery or the use of slavery. Interesting little tidbit there, right? So, first question, epistemic self-refutation. Second question is a moral contradiction. And then the third one, this would be my final question if I was in a debate with a Buddhist, is if Atman is true, meaning there is no self, does Buddhism not encourage deeper pathologies? And I'm sure the Buddhists would say, what? Pathologies? How would Buddhism develop deeper pathologies? Well, I came up with quietism and passivity. So if there is no self, there's no need to engage in moral and civic life, right? The relationships you have with other people really have no intrinsic value. And in fact, if you really want to even be more consistent, it could cause deeper desire. And so this is just like the American woman who became a Buddhist. She has to renounce her family. Is that really a good thing? I mean, from a Christian perspective, absolutely not. From a Christian perspective, and this is one of the ironies of these people that claim no self, is how narcissistic they are. They have incredibly large egos, right? I mean, even to claim, like we're going to see this guy, and when we start playing these videos, we're going to see a guy claim that he's enlightened. Imagine a Christian monk doing that. Like a Christian monk, because we privilege humility to be glorified, that it's the humble and the meek. I mean, if you saw a Christian monk telling you that he's going to be a saint and he's the best, he's the best Christian, the best follower of Christ, he's already fully illuminated, we'd say, wow, that dude's in pre-lest. Holy crap. But you have New Agers doing all over the place. I mean, I was just looking up, videos from just major Eckhart Tolle, whoever it may be. These people are literally trying to tell you they're enlightened. The most unhumble thing you could do. And that's the irony, right? Just like psychedelics do the same thing. I talk about how psychedelics actually exacerbate the ego in the attempt of these ego death, as we'll hear Sam Harris talk about. What happens? The ego comes back even stronger. Again, I don't believe that there's a true ego death during the use of psychedelics, but they'll say, oh yeah, I experienced my ego death. I totally realized that David Patrick Harry is an illusion, and that really what I am is cosmic consciousness having an experience right here, right now. And the only thing that exists is the present moment. There's no future and there's no past. And it's like, okay. And then they'll tell you, yeah, but you don't understand it because you haven't taken the drug. You haven't seen what I have seen. You haven't done what, dude, I thought you're illuminate. I thought you're enlightened. I thought you just killed your ego. Why are you constantly telling me that I don't know what you know because I haven't done what you've done? Like, what? No, in fact, psychedelics, I think you can make a serious argument, actually inflates the ego of many people who take part. Yeah, I really got high and part of me died. Part of me died, but when it came back, I realized that you're a freaking idiot and you're a hypocrite and you're a racist and you're a bigot because you don't believe what I believe. It's like, what? All right. So anyways, the irony is that these people actually have incredibly large egos, even though they're constantly talking about have they realized they have no self. And I mean, the irony, right? Why would you need to be humble if there's no self, right? The whole point of humility from our Christian perspective is that we are sort of condescending ourselves below God, below others, to demonstrate our recognition of our own frailties, that we are coming up short regard to the image of Christ in us. But if there's no self, there's nothing to be humbled towards. So the first one I would say is the pathology is this quietism and passivity. There's no reason to engage in the moral life or civic life if there's no self. That seems like a pathology to me. That seems like a dysfunctional person in our society. Number two, determinism, right? Remember I debated the determinist chick on the Whatever podcast? I mean, absolutely infuriating, right? Ignorant, arrogant, but she was a determinist and she kept referring back to Sam Harris, right? So Sam Harris is going to be on our stream today, who's also a determinist, but he's going to tell you about how he's dissolved his ego through psychedelics and how Buddhism describes his understanding of no self. Were you determined to believe that, Sam Harris? So determinism has no responsibility. Even, events just happen by causal necessity. And that's how Buddhism understands the world. It's an unfolding of events due to causal necessity because people haven't burned off their karma yet. Okay. So therefore, why would you need to do anything to stop any injustice in the world? Anything that you would see as morally wrong, because it's all predetermined. Who cares? What's the point? That sounds like a pathology to me. I mean, the next one is psychological disassociation, right? There's actually clinical research here of people doing like the no self meditation or doing very high doses of psychedelics to attain this ego death. And they have a psychological disassociation. But even modern psychology doesn't say that psychological disassociation is a good thing. But no self meditation and mantras can blunt empathy and identity and produce a sort of emotional numbing due to the psychological disassociation that people go through. And that's what the guy that we're going to listen to who says he's enlightened is talking about, is how he's able to transcend all concepts of self. And he's basically disassociated from everything that he used to think that he was. And that's how he's enlightened. It's, I mean, these people, I mean, would you want somebody who's, this quietism and passivity, doesn't want to engage in civic life, determinist, doesn't really have any sort of moral responsibility, and then also has a psychological disassociation? What? And then moral relativism. Number 4, the fourth pathology that I have here is moral relativism. Good and evil, as I said, reduces to momentary preferences. So would you want to live next to a neighbor who basically says, there is no such thing as good and evil, right and wrong, virtue, sin. Everything's basically preference. And, if you're, dog or wife, if I decide to do something to you or your property, there's no right or wrong to it. I mean, this is not somebody you'd want to live next to in society. And then the fifth one is obviously metaphysical nihilism. So being and reality become processed to be erased, right? Think about that. The entire Buddhist cosmology and paradigm believes that you are only existing right now because you have a bunch of karma you haven't burned off yet through good actions, through your dharma, through correct action. And so because you have all of this detritus, you are living multiple lives. And the whole point of who you are is to become aware of this so that you can then be essentially annihilated back into emptiness, because that's who you truly are, which is also true for creation itself. The entire universe itself, the whole idea is that eventually we'll all go back to nothingness. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that wonderful? What? So yes, Buddhism, by definition, ultimately leads to being and reality becoming processes that are aimed at to be totally erased. And so from that perspective, this is just my opening monologue. This Anatman no self concept is absolutely retarded. It's dumb. It nullifies the laws of logic, the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity. The law of identity, because as we'll see here, we're going to watch a monk actually say that, pretend you have a Buddhist monk and you have a businessman, and the businessman becomes the Buddhist monk and the Buddhist monk becomes the businessman. Which one is which? Well, obviously the businessman became a Buddhist monk and the Buddhist monk became a businessman, and the two people kind of switch positions. There's no difference. There's no difference. It's the same person. It's the same person because the identities become fluid and they're defined by their actions processes, right? And so that violates the law of identity. So you're telling me that there's no static identity between the businessman and the monk when they switch places, that now, even though they've switched places, they're still the same. What? Shut up. This stuff is stupid. This stuff is stupid. Yeah, there is no meaning to the universe in Buddha. That's an absolute fact. That's an absolute fact. It's impossible to become a Buddha too. Well, yeah. Yeah, there is no creator God in Buddhism. That's also true. But as I said, I mean, even the dubiousness of the Buddhist claims, like I said, think of a religion. I mean, imagine Christianity. We get criticized all the time for the Bible, for our canon, right? And they say, oh my gosh, it was written, what, 30 to 60 years after Christ? Oh my gosh, how unreliable. Have you ever heard of Buddhism? Dude, the Pali Canon, the oldest Buddhist text, was written at earliest 400 years after the Buddha. We don't know a damn thing what the Buddha actually taught. And we're said, well, here's the Buddhist argument. It was actually the true teachings of the Buddha were maintained by oral tradition for 400 to 500 years until we concretized them in the Pali Canon. Okay, well, how do you know which ones were which? Because by then you already had at least 18 different schools of Buddhism that had mutually exclusive claims and said that the Buddha taught different things. Which one was real? Yeah, you can't know. You can't know. When you start to compare Buddhism to orthodoxy in regards to like textual legitimacy and historicity, it's not even close. It's not even close. And I'm going to show you a graph to prove that here in just a minute. Dano throws in $2. Thank you so much, Dano. God bless you, brother. Really appreciate it. Candle Jack throws in $5. He says, are there any real distinctions? Are there any real distinctions between Hume and Buddha's idea of no sense? Or is it the same underlying thought process? No. The connection between Hume and Buddha, Hume, okay, so Buddhism is saying that what you refer to as the self, or the sense of I, or personhood, maybe what we would refer to as personhood as Orthodox Christians, is the aggregation of 5 categories. Form, okay, but of course they have no metaphysical understanding or argumentation for how form exists. Form, feeling, so perception, sensation. Number 3, perception. 4, mental formations, and then 5, consciousness. Now, of course, they don't even have a metaphysics to make this coherent as something that is not another fluctuating process within space and time. Because we're going to hear these people argue that there actually is no space and time. But anyways, so the 5 aggregates are what they're called, or I think it's the skandhavas in Sanskrit. That's what defines personhood. The reason why I brought up David Hume is because in 1739, in his treatise on human nature, he argues for what he called his bundle theory of self. So there's like a famous quote about him talking about every time he tries to sit with himself and come to knowledge of himself, he realizes that he can't see himself without himself having perception. And so that leads to him arguing that what you are is a bundle theory of perception, meaning there is no self other than the fact that you can perceive things and create a delineation or distinction between you and the thing being seen. And then you have sensations from the world. That's why you think you're the self. My argument is that continuity of construction and that empiricism, which that implies, and the skepticism, those 3, that totally unites the sort of personhood understanding of Buddhism with Hume. That was my argument. Mr. Fista gives 5 COTEL Crew memberships. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate your support, man. God bless you. Thank you. And welcome everybody who just got a COTEL Crew membership. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right. Dano throws in another $2. Thank you so much, Dano. God bless you, brother. Shout out to Del Bridge, throws in 5. It says, DPH, may I be a guest on your channel in the future to discuss my journey from syncretism to Christianity? I don't know, bro. I understand why you may want to reach out or something, but I don't know you. I don't know your background. Um, you know, I just don't do. I've never had people on who asked to be on. So I appreciate the support. I've seen you in the chats multiple times, Delbridge. God bless you, brother. I appreciate it, but I don't know. I'm not sure, man. We'd have to talk privately for it to see if it would be something that I have so much content I want to make, man. I have so many guests I want to have on that I haven't reached. I'm still catching up on content because of my move. So, anyways, thank you, brother. Elite Beaver 444 throws in a super sticker for $1.49. Thank you very much, Elite Beaver. Do appreciate that. All right. Guys, if you want to support today's stream, please do so using the Streamlabs or Dono chat links. I'd greatly appreciate that. And if you would like to use YouTube, please use YouTube. I'd greatly appreciate that as well. And if you're feeling generous, please give some COTEL Crew memberships. I'd greatly appreciate that. Thomas throws in 10, says, I'm thinking that Buddhism is so syncretic out of necessity. On its own, it's empty and needs to borrow gods and cosmology to make it seem coherent and to give it actual meaning. No, I think that's totally accurate, Thomas. I think Buddhism gets so much more prestige in the West because it's novel, not because it's true. I mean, the question truly is whether you believe in metaphysics and objective epistemology and morality. To become Buddhist, you essentially have to become nominalist. And if you reject nominalism, you can't be a Buddhist. You just can't, right? And so for me, just at the core of my being, I believe so much that logic and mathematics and reason, like these things are tools to come to knowledge claims. There's just no way in who I am, I could be a Buddhist. It just seems like in the attempt to transcend the mind, you almost have to turn the damn thing off and not even use it. It's like, well, guys, come on. Like, what are we doing here? You're not even thinking. You're making totally incoherent arguments. So yeah, I think that's why Buddhism is incredibly syncretic. I think that's why Buddhism actually probably does well, like it did in East Asia, blending from the Indian subcontinent, getting into China, getting into Korea, going to Japan, getting into Tibet. And every time Buddhism moves, it takes on new forms and new aesthetics and new understandings, and it kind of fits itself with whatever culture it is. I mean, Tibetan Buddhism, for example, is essentially the reason why it's tantric, the reason why it has all these weird rituals to gods, sex rituals. Like, I mean, you've seen the Dalai Lama try to kiss kids, right? You guys saw the video of the Dalai Lama sticking his tongue out, telling the kid to suck on it. You've seen this, right? Tell me you've seen it. If you haven't, I will play this video today. I will absolutely play this video if you guys have not seen it. There's a video of the Dalai Lama sticking his tongue out, asking a little boy to suck on it. The reason is that there's been pedophilia. Like, that's please don't. I'm serious, guys. I'm very serious. I feel, yeah, Dano's seen it. He says I've seen it. VP Ortho said, please no. I'm serious. I'm going to play it. I don't give it. I don't give a damn. I'm going to force you guys to see this because pedophilia and like weird sexual rituals is actually part of Tibetan Buddhism. It's a tantric form of Buddhism. Tantric traditions like the Kali worship in the Tamil culture of southern India. That's a tantric tradition. It's a left-handed path. Tibetan Buddhism is built upon what is referred to as Bon shamanism, B-O-N, Bon, and the Bon people were shamanistic. They were practicing a sort of, animalism, even psychedelic paganism. I mean, I have a book I told Jay about this one time when we were doing a stream. I have a book explicitly on, see if I can find it later, explicitly on Vajrayana Buddhism, and arguing that they participated in this Amanita muscaria mushroom ritual because he found evidence of them drinking urine, and they have like a pissing pot. And I'm not even kidding, guys. And this guy is pro psychedelic, right? So he's trying to make the affirmative argument that, look, inebriation, what he referred to as entheogens, are used in Tibetan Buddhism. And the point is, Tibetan Buddhism, like they do a lot of wild stuff, but why is it that Tibetan Buddhism was able to incorporate, what makes it so different from Zen Buddhism is because it adopted basically all this shamanistic practices. And that's why, the other Buddhist traditions don't have a Dalai Lama. That specifically regards to Tibet. In Mongolia, right? So Vajrayana Buddhism is in Mongolia and Tibet. Those are the two places. All right. So Dano throws in another two. Thank you so much, Dano. He says, God bless Mr. and Miss DPH. Appreciate the work. Thank you very much, Dano. Truly appreciate your support, brother. God bless you. Okay, so now I got a bunch of fun stuff we're going to get into. We got a bunch of fun videos. It's going to be a good time. Probably a lot of laughs moving forward. But before we do, I just want to do some quick housekeeping. And so if you would like to support my work, again, I have a document, a study guide for today's stream. I'll show you guys here just a little bit before we dive into the videos. Go and sign up at the Logos Academy. If you're looking for a men's only academy that discuss philosophy, theology, world religions, mysticism, women, relationships, masculinity, I got the community for you. This is the only community that I know of that's doing this. That's mostly Orthodox Christian men, men's only community. Sign up with the link that I just provided there. Again, major thank you to Gordon. Shout out to our brother Gordon. Shout out to Germany. He's actually a German. My wife, obviously from Germany, so I have an affinity for the heritage Germans. Shout out to you, Gordon. Thank you so much for the support today, brother, and choosing to sponsor a stream. This is a great topic that I have never fully addressed. So shout out to Gordon. Thank you, brother. And if you would like to sponsor a stream, you can sign up with this link right here. Let me know the topic. We can go back and forth, and then I will spend, like today, I spent a considerable amount of time actually going over for that opening monologue. Though it was shorter, you'd be surprised how much time it actually takes to go over and really formulate my argument and come up with, what I want to argue. So thank you, Gordon. And if you also would like to sponsor a stream, no matter what the topic be, you can sign up with that link right there. If you'd like to sign up for a one-on-one session, you can do so with this link right here. We can hop into a private Zoom meeting, discuss whatever your heart desires. Also, if you'd like to check out my book, my new book, Return to Babylon, From Adam to Antichrist, a theosis critical takedown of transhumanism, you can go to my website and sign up for a hand-signed copy. You can do so right here. Or if you'd like to get the cheaper version, you can just go over to Amazon. I have paperback and hardback, and you can do that with this link right here. Also, if you did buy it from Amazon and you'd like to help me out, please give me a 5-star review, leave a comment. I'd greatly appreciate that. That is huge for Amazon. And from what I was reading online, if you can get a book up to like 100 5-star reviews, it doesn't have to be 5-star, but if you get 100 reviews that are positive, essentially Amazon, 50 or more, Amazon will just begin recommending it to a lot of people. So I need to get more reviews so that the book will be offered more. Dano, any copy, I only sell hardbacks. So if you purchase from my website, you only get a hardback. So I literally have a box of hardbacks right here. And those are the only ones that I sell through my website. So the only way to get a paperback is to go through Amazon. I only sell hardbacks through my website. So that's a good question. Thank you, Dano. And then also, if you guys are interested in peptides, you're looking to optimize your health, use promo code COTEL, COTEL. Again, I'm a new affiliate with Level Up. They make incredible products, very, very high quality. Like I said, I'm currently doing a 2-month cycle on BP 157 peptides. If you would like to check this out, go on this link right here. This is the all products section on the website, and see if these things are something that you would like to look into. I just did a stream last week with Dr. Michael Moeller going over what peptides are. Are they the new steroids? How are they different from steroids? How are they different from, supplements, stuff like this? Use promo code COTEL. They're expensive. They're very, very high quality. That's why Dr. Mo actually contacted the owner of Level Up, and that's why they reached out about becoming an affiliate, because obviously I like health, but they're very high quality. Use promo code COTEL. You get 15% off if that's something you're interested in. All right. Okay. Now, let me show you guys something real quick from my document, and then we'll get straight into the videos. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I put this thing together. You guys already get it. Again, this is going to be available for anybody who's in the Logos Academy. All these are available under the classroom section. It's the very first classroom or course or playlist. All these are provided. You can download them very, very easily. And I have the video embedded that they're tied to, so you could actually watch the stream if you're interested, if you missed the stream. So you get it. Atman, Sanskrit, soul. It's the thing that's posited in the Vedas and the Upanishads that is reincarnating. Anatman, no soul. Okay, we get it. We don't need to go through all the intricacies. We talked about the 5 aggregates, the 3 marks of existence, all this different stuff. Okay. Already addressed much of this. So moving forward, we don't need to get into all the unique stuff about Buddhism. So this is something the philosophical implications of the doctrine. Reject substance ontology, process ontology of interdependence. Told you about that. Being is replaced by becoming, identity as causal continuity. Knowledge arises through conditioned mind. There is no knower. Okay. Now here is what I wanted to show you. Check out this graph. So this took me a little bit of time to put together. Check this out. Here's Buddhism compared to all I did was look for the historical legitimacy between Buddhist text and Christian texts. Okay. That's all I'm comparing here. The time gap between founder and written record. Buddhism. The first written accounts are 400 to 500 years after the Buddha. Christianity, 20 to 60 years. 20 to 60 years. The number of early manuscripts, few early manuscripts, full canons, 1st century. Now, we're told the Buddha existed sometime in the 500s. 5,000 plus Greek manuscripts, earliest fragment within 1st century. Okay. Eyewitness proximity, none. None. Not a single eyewitness to the Buddha. Obviously, it'd be impossible based on the time difference. Christianity, multiple first and second-hand eyewitness sources. Okay, seems like Christianity's got a little bit more historically reliable. Language preservation, multiple divergent languages and canons regarding Buddhism. Christianity, consistent Koine Greek New Testament corpus. Okay. What about doctrinal consistency? Many mutually exclusive schools. Unified core doctrine of incarnation, crucifixion, resurrection, basically the 7 ecumenical councils. I didn't have enough space to go into everything. So funny, first 1,000 years, we have one church. We have one theology. Doctrinal consistency of Buddhism is many, many mutually exclusive schools. Historical cross-verification, sparse archaeology and external records, meaning it's very difficult to find any material evidence for many of the historical accounts of Buddhism. Compare that with Christianity, supported by external Jewish, Roman, and archaeological sources. We have tons of archaeological sources to prove our worldview. I just thought that was a funny little difference. So some of the logical incoherence, the self that denies the self. We talked about that epistemic self-refutation, violation of the law of non-contradiction, the problem of morality and karmic continuity, ontological nihilism, theological refutation, the logos versus emptiness, being as gift, not illusion, the human person as icon of the Trinity, man as hypostatic, a concrete person in communion, mirroring the tripersonal God, to dissolve the person to impersonal fluxes, to obliterate the imago Dei, what Buddhism calls ego must be extinguished. Orthodoxy calls the fallen fragment itself that must be healed and deified. So where they look for annihilation, we look for transfiguration. And though that's actually what I was mentioning earlier, stuff like that. How did this stuff become popular? Again, New Age syncretism, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, Muji, Michael Singer popularized Anatman under phrases like "the ego is an illusion." That's my Eckhart Tolle. The ego is an illusion. You are not the thinker. You are the perceiver. There is no separate self. Only consciousness is real. Awaken to your true nature, which is pure awareness. It merges Buddhist emptiness, sunyata, with Advaita Vedanta. That's the non-dualism of Hinduism, pure consciousness, producing a pseudo-mystical synthesis that denies distinction between creator and creature. Again, I hit on why it appeals to some of the Western and the post-Christian vacuum: spiritual experience without dogma, mysticism without obedience, peace without repentance, unity without any sort of personal God, and having to submit to any form of authority. Therapeutic and consumer appeal, just like how somebody mentioned that Buddhism is so syncretic. I mean, you can make it whatever the hell you want. And so it becomes a sort of therapeutic consumerism, flattering metaphysics, all that different stuff. So anyways, I was going to mention how it came into the West was really through theosophy. Let me see. Anyways, you guys get it. If you want to see this whole document, you can go to sign up at the Logos Academy. I'm going to share that link one more time. I want to get into all of our videos and have a little bit more fun than this. Bro, this sounds like my ex. Well, you know what? Buddhism is kind of very, I could see it easily appeal to a lot of women. So I don't think that's a huge surprise, to be honest. All right. So I'm excited for this. Let's get into all these videos. Let me pull it up real quick. I'm gonna have to throw in an Alp for this. So this is our first guy, some British guy who I would assume is probably somewhere in East Asia, explaining what the no self is. Here, let me throw in an Alp, guys. If you want the best nicotine pouches on the internet in the world, get yourself a discount and get yourself the best nicotine pouches there are. Great flavors: spearmint, wintergreen, and cool mint are my personal favorites. So check them out if you're interested. If you're not into nicotine, don't take them. I'm tired of you Orthodox guys tell me, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're shilling drugs on your Church of the Eternal Logos YouTube channel." Guys, it's nicotine. Chill out. Like, they're nicotine pouches. My mic stopped working. What? You guys hear me? Check, check, check. My mic stopped working? It's showing me that it's working just fine. You gotta be kidding me. What about now? Check, check, check. Check, check, check. I just plugged it in, make sure that's not loose. What about now? OW, what is that, Thomas? My laptop mic is on. What? I'm not on a laptop. Oh, you're hearing through. Oh, what? Okay, check, check, check. Now. You guys hear me now? Okay. Yeah, some reason StreamYard here just kicked me off my own microphone. Okay. That was weird. I didn't even go into the settings. How the heck did my mic get disconnected? Okay. So here's the first one that I want to show you guys. So this is some British guy that I found, again, explaining the theology of the Anatman. So here we go.
Summed up, and quite simply, if you take a businessman, you take a monk. Are they the same thing? No. But if that person who's a businessman becomes a monk, or that person who's a monk becomes a businessman, it is the same person, it is the same physical body, the same thinking mind that appears different by perception as a result of different causes and conditions. And that which knows is the only aspect that remains unchanged. The thinking mind and the physical persona is changed, because this physical persona and thinking mind of the businessman has very different requirements and needs to that of the monk, and vice versa. Summed up and quite simple.
There you go. That's just summing up the whole Anatman theology right there. Here's the Dalai Lama taking his stab at it. So he's going to begin by where is the self? Where is the self? Where is it? Is it here?
Where is self? Where is I? Where is Dalai Lama? No. There is no independent self. So anger, jealousy, all these, you see, very much based on strong feeling of I, self. So the concept selflessness, you see, that reduce the very basis of destructive emotion. There is big differences, appearance and reality.
I love, so he's going to tell you about reality when he has no epistemic or metaphysical basis to even describe it. So
appearance, everything, you see, independently exists there. Reality, if we go deeper, then it is not like appears. You see, a deeper level, something different. So most destructive emotion, you see, based on appearances. Besides this body, mind, where is I? Where is self? That is Buddhist concept of Anatman theory. Anatma, selflessness, like that. So these are very useful in order to tackle our emotion. So emotion is the actually destroyer of peace of mind.
So wouldn't peace of mind also be an emotion? I mean, I hear a lot about bliss. I hear a lot about Buddhists talking about once you reach shunyata, once you reach the experience of emptiness, it's like a sense of joy. I watched one British. Why is it that so many British people love Buddhism? I watched. It was a British chick who was, she had her garb on as a Buddhist, and she's like, "Let me tell you about the no self. The no self is the realization that there is no you there, and that really what you are is unified with something much deeper, and you are the sense of joy and the sense of bliss and true happiness." And that's the end of the video. And I'm like, what? And he's just saying all emotions are a distraction from self. Where is the self? Where is the self? Is he here? Tell me if self is here. Where is the self?
And eventually destroy your own physical health. So I have some special medicine in order to keep healthy body through healthy mind with this philosophy.
Why don't we look up what his medicine is? Why don't we look that up real quick? I told you guys we got to do it. We have to do it. I'm sorry. Dalai Lama tongue kissing. Here we go.
Yeah. Then I think finally here also.
Come kiss the self, little boy. Come kiss me.
And suck my tongue.
What?
And suck my tongue.
But Dalai Lama, who is sucking the tongue? There is no self. Who is actually sucking the tongue? There's no one there to suck the tongue. Oh, gosh. All right. That must be the medicine that he uses, right? That must be his medicine right here. I've got the special medicine.
Peace of mind. And eventually destroy your own physical health. So I have some special medicine in order to keep healthy body through healthy mind with this philosophy.
Does it have to do with little boys, Dalai Lama? There's also other stuff where he, there's like multiple videos you can find where he's strangely intimate with children. And as I said, just go look up. I'm not even going to do it for today's stream. Just go look up sex rituals and stuff in Tibetan Buddhism. You guys can do that on your own. I'm not doing that today. You'll find a bunch of weird stuff. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Elite Beaver says, are you going to discuss Buddhism's relationship to self-deletion, such as Japanese in World War II, and also the willingness to just toss their INF like trash? I mean, yeah, that's the nihilism of Buddhism, though, right? So in World War II, the kamikaze pilots that were willingly sacrificing themselves when they ran out of ammo or whatnot, part of that, not all Buddhists are going to have that same sense of national pride. That's a uniquely Japanese thing, right? It has to do with Shintoism. It has to do with the people that inhabit the island of Japan, the historical progress, the ways in which they've shielded themselves from Western influence, unlike some of the other Asian countries. So Japan kind of has a bit of a unique context. But yeah, to the point of the kamikaze pilots in World War II, that's what I was talking about. It's sort of it's a metaphysical nihilism. What if you are truly a Buddhist believer? What would prevent you from just killing yourself? Technically, Buddhism, at least majority, from my understanding, the majority of their schools renounce that self-deletion is a positive thing. But you have traditions like Jainism. I don't know if you're familiar with Jainism in India. It's like a extreme nonviolent religion where they like sweep the sidewalk while they walk so they don't step on any insects because they believe that's bad karma. They will actually kill themselves by not eating anything, including plants, because they believe that one of the highest virtues you could espouse is to allow yourself to decompose and die by not ingesting or killing any life. That's in Jainism. And interestingly, it's not as popular now, but historically, if you were married to a man, a Jain man who did that, you know what your obligation is to do? Your obligation is when they do the funeral papyri where they burn the body, your obligation is to jump on the open flame, and you'll be shamed if you don't. And if in some instances they'll throw you on it. So interesting form of nonviolence, if you will. Anyways, Hunter throws in $6.99. Thank you so much, brother. He says, isn't Buddhism and atheism different sides of the same coin in terms of morals, ethics, possibility of knowledge? Yeah, essentially. Essentially, it is. I would say the difference is atheism, because, at least in the Western sense, it will engage in philosophical categories and philosophical rhetoric more readily than Buddhism. I mean, I would imagine if you're with a true Buddhist believer, it's going to be very difficult to get them to engage in like the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, because it's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. So it's because of Maya, because the world itself is illusionary, which is true for all the dharmic schools, right? So I'm talking about Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. Those are called the dharmic religions. They all believe that the exterior world is an illusion, that you're basically just tumbling through a reincarnational dream until you actualize, for them, the soul to be liberated, for the Buddhists to annihilate the soul and realize there's nothing there. But yeah, Buddhism really is the other side of the atheist coin, because they can't justify any form of epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, aesthetics, or a soteriology. I mean, you basically just have to go on faith that if you begin these processes and these rituals to purify your mind and annihilate the concept of self, that you'll be saved in some sense. Really, it's an escapement from suffering. I would really define Buddhism as more of an escape, because what exactly are you living for in Buddhism? If there's a Buddhist in the chat, please let me know. I'd be curious. What are you living for as a Buddhist? If you take all the precepts seriously, now again, there's contradictions between, the Eightfold Path and the fact that there is no objective morality, but you're just living for yourself to realize enlightenment, that there is no self. It's literally a sort of escapist religion. Truly. Thank you very much, Hunter. And Mr. Fiesta that was probably with the Dalai Lama. Will you suck my tongue? Suck my tongue. God. Yeah, I understand the sentiment, Mr. Fiesta. I totally get it. All right. So, all right, let's get into Alan Watts here. So here's Alan Watts telling you that the false idea of who you actually are.
In our experience a differentiation between what we do and what happens to us. We have a certain number of actions that we define as voluntary, and we feel in control of those. And then over against that, there is all those things that are involuntary. But the dividing line between these two is very arbitrary. Because, for example, when you move your hand, you feel that you decide whether to open it or to close it. But then ask yourself, how do you decide? When you decide to open your hand, do you first decide to decide?
So to contemplate whether I have a free will to engage in bodily functions, I needed to decide if I decided to decide. And then when I decided to decide, did I decide it? I mean, it's just an infinite regress loop. This is why I would argue so much of this new age stuff. And I did a whole thing saying Alan Watts is wrong. A long time ago, I did a stream on that. It's like a form of like sophistry that's presented as like spiritual illumination. Like when you opened your hand, did you decide to open your hand, or did you decide to decide? No, No, I'm actually made in the image of God, and I have free will, and I do have bodily control over my body. And yeah, I can decide I'm going to open one finger. I'm open my whole hand. Yeah. I don't need to decide if I decided. I mean, come on.
You don't, do you? You just decide, and how do you do that? And if you don't know how you do it, is it voluntary or involuntary? Let's consider breathing. You can feel that you breathe deliberately. You can control your breath. But when you don't think about it, it goes on. Is it voluntary or involuntary?
It's both. It's both. We can voluntarily breathe, and we have a a biological system that will also do it for us, because the body is trying to survive, and it allows us to perform biological operations at a subconscious level. So it's still consciousness.
And so we come to have a very arbitrary definition of self. That much of my act.
So we have an arbitrary concept of self, because he gave us an example of whether do you truly decide to breathe? Do you truly decide to open your hand? It's like, no, dude, the self is the imago Dei. That's not arbitrary. The self is essential for knowledge claims. The self is essential for moral capability or culpability and responsibility. No, it's not an arbitrary definition.
Activity which I feel I do. And that then doesn't include breathing most of the time. It doesn't include the heartbeats. It doesn't include the activity of the glands. It doesn't include digestion. It doesn't include how you shape your bones, circulate your blood. Do you or do you not do these things? Now, if you get with yourself and you find out that you are all of yourself, a very strange thing happens. You find that your body knows that you are one with the universe. In other words, that the so-called involuntary circulation of your blood is one continuous process with the stars shining. If you find out that it's...
Was that created, Alan? Was the universe created? Did the universe have an origin point? Because again, within the cosmology of Buddhism and a lot of the Eastern mysticism, they're in the same spot of ancient Greek philosophy, where they just believe that the universe was eternal. Or if you're Hindu, you know, it goes through the Kali Yuga cycles, the yugas. So yeah, God created the universe. God created the human person, and the human body has automatic processes. Thank God we don't have to think about pumping. You know, I don't have to think about my heart pumping every time it pumps and every time it beats. I wouldn't say it's the exact same thing as the stars shining, but if you want to use that very grandiose analogy, yeah, it's because there's a creator God. That's why there's a pattern, whether it be fractals, pi, phi, Fibonacci, sacred geometry, sacred space, cymatics, fractal patterns in sacred geometry within sound itself, because God spoke the world into existence. That's why magic is real. You know, Vajrayana Buddhism is all about words. It's all about mantras and how you can create things through various phrases. You know, it's very ritualistic in that sense. Yeah, that's because there's a creator God, not because the universe just did it itself.
You who circulates your blood, you will at the same moment find out that you are shining the sun.
No, I'm not shining the sun, Alan. I appreciate that new identity, that somehow I have control over solar processes, but no, I am not pumping, me pumping the blood in my body is not the same thing as controlling the sun. But you see how this poetry, this sort of sophistry of rhetoric, can be so compelling to someone who doesn't have the categories and the foundation to stand on to be in opposition to it.
Because your physical organism is one continuous process with everything else that's going on.
And so remember, in my opening section, I talked about how the reason why Buddhism correlates so well with the secular West is because just like Buddhism, it nullifies being metaphysics, it nullifies universal truth claims, it nullifies objective morality. And what does it replace it with? Process. And so what do we see Alan Watts doing right here? Your physical organism is one continuous process with everything else going on. Process. It's all process because there is no substance ontology.
Just as the waves are continuous with the ocean, your body is continuous with the total energy system of the cosmos. And it's all you. Only you're playing the game that you're only this bit of it. But as I tried to explain, there are in physical reality no such things as separate events.
No, there's definitely such thing as separate events. Again, this is just a total paradigmatic difference between the world that he's putting forth, which the reason why I chose this video is because it's consistent with all the presuppositions that I already outlined in regards to defining the concept of the Anatman. Because the whole thing that they're trying to get to, and the point that he's trying to make is that space and time is an illusion. There is no such thing as a past and a future. I'm going to show you a guy who makes this the explicit claim. There is no past and there is no future. And therefore, the only thing there is consciousness. And consciousness, this panpsychic consciousness, is doing all processes, but that's who you really are. And who you think you are is a total illusion. That's the psychological disassociation. Like, I don't want to live next to someone who thinks that they are shining the sun. I don't want to be next to that person. Please do not move in next to me. I don't want you as my neighbor.
Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it? You never learned, but you're this miracle? Well, the point is that from a strictly physical...
A miracle, you say? A miracle by whose will? The universe?
Physical, scientific standpoint, this organism is a continuous energy with everything else that's going on. And if I am my foot, I am the sun. Only we've got this little part.
How does that make sense? If you are your foot, then you are the sun. What? How does that make sense?
Partial view, we've got the idea that no, I'm just something in this body, the ego. That's a joke. The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. It's like a radar on a ship. The radar on a ship is a troubleshooter. Is there anything in the way? And conscious attention is a designed function of the brain to scan the environment, like a radar does, and note for any trouble-making changes. But if you identify yourself with your troubleshooter, then naturally you define yourself as being in a perpetual state of anxiety. And the moment we cease to identify with the ego and become aware that we are the whole organism, you realize that as the first...
VP Ortho. I love that. The no true self man fallacy. The no true self man fallacy. I love that.
How harmonious it all is. Because your organism is a miracle of harmony. All this thing functioning together. Even those corpuscles and creatures that are fighting each other in the bloodstream and eating each other up. If they weren't doing that, you wouldn't be healthy. So what is discord at one level of your being is harmony at a higher level.
No. How does that make sense? I mean, even within a sort of fractal approach that a lot of these New Agers would support, disharmony at one level would demonstrate a disconcordance with the next level of being. That there should be a similar pattern throughout macro and micro spectrums. So, yeah, if you What? I
And you begin to realize that, and you begin to be aware, too, that the discords of your life and the discords of people's life, which are a fight at one level, at a higher level of the universe, are healthy and harmonious. And you suddenly realize that everything that you are and do is at that level as magnificent and as free of any blemish as the patterns in waves, the markings in marble, the way a cat moves, and that this world is really okay.
There it is.
It can't be.
There's the mushroom.
Otherwise it couldn't exist.
Everybody's talking about the mushroom guru. There's the mushroom.
So then, if you awaken from this illusion, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. What you are basically, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself. So in this idea, then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality, not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is.
So there you go. You get the apotheosis. This is why theosophy, like Helena Blavatsky, was really instrumental, honestly, in bringing and incorporating the Anatman concept of Buddhism into sort of Western spiritual practices. I mean, you can look at some of the German idealists. You know, Schopenhauer was big into Buddhism. You know, his whole philosophy is about will. This is where Nietzsche essentially builds off Schopenhauer. But so, I mean, the ultimate conclusion based on what Watts is saying is the conscious awareness inside of you is God. And therefore, just enjoy the world. You know, there's really nothing to do, which is ironic because I brought this up and people, the fans of Alan Watts, hated me bringing this up. The fact that the man was an adulterer. He cheated on his first wife. He cheated on his second one. He lived, you know, towards the end of his life, he had problems with alcohol. And look, we all struggle, but I'm sure, I mean, is he morally culpable in his worldview? He's just the experience of God in the world doing whatever he likes. Was it wrong for him to cheat on his wife? Slowboy Whiteboard says, sounds like a cop convention. L. Ron Bumquist quote in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then after that, he can actually raise himself to the rank of cool. And he can become one of those cool guys. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right, next one that we got. I'm not even going to get into this. This is by Thach Nhat Hanh talking about no self. It's just, I find it incredibly boring to hear some of these guys talk. If we can come back to it, but I got more stuff, honestly, to get into. Okay, what's this one?
Turns into a boat.
Okay.
He pumps up something.
So here's Ram Dass, Richard Alpert. If you guys aren't familiar, Richard Alpert was one of the LSD experimenters. He was a psychologist at Harvard. Let me pull him up. Richard Alpert. Later known as Ram Dass. So Richard Alpert, this gentleman right here, he, and I don't mean to speak bad of the dead, you know, from most people described him as a very joyous and loving guy, but he got his PhD from Stanford University. He was working with Leary in the early 1960s. They both get fired. Well, actually, Richard Alpert gets fired in 1963 for sleeping with one of the undergraduate boys. The only restriction that Harvard gave Leary and Alpert and Metzner when they were doing their research was it can only be for graduate students. No undergraduate students are allowed to, just because of the legal ramifications, to participate in like the Marsh Chapel experiment, where they gave like half the people psilocybin and the other half had a placebo. And it was during Good Friday, I believe. And they experienced like the service there in Boston Chapel at Boston University. And, Houston Smith, the famous religious studies scholar, he was actually one of the participants in the Boston Chapel experiment. And he was one that actually got the active psilocybin. Well, Richard Alpert sleeps with one of the undergraduates. Harvard then forces, they fire him. And Leary, although he was disgusted by what Alpert did, quit and protest. And that's when he goes up to Millbrook in New York and starts his journey as the psychedelic guru. Well, Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, eventually leaves America and goes to India. He has this guru that he claims was fully enlightened and was doing these miracles. And according to him, they had an intimate relationship together. And this is why Ram Dass claimed that he was bisexual the rest of his life. He liked both men and women. And he claims that he gave his guru LSD and it did nothing to him. And he gave him more and more. It did nothing to him. And he realized, oh, wow, he truly is enlightened. And when he came back as Ram Dass and basically became a guru and traveled around the United States as some type of Eastern mystic. So what I'm getting ready to play for you guys now is this video of Ram Dass. Let me refresh this.
There used to be
And so let me start it from here. He got into a lot of stuff, but I found a section in one of these where he talks about Ram Dass poses annihilation of the self.
Deflates the girl and everything gets deflated back on the fish, and he puts it all back in his back of his station wagon, and he's going off, and you see the station wagon driving down, and you see a tack in the road, and the tack hits the tire of the road, and then the station wagon slowly turns back into nothing. Right? Okay. See, we can go through the stages where we get to the point where we are so free of clinging. We are not clinging. We don't care if we eat or don't eat, or if we eat good food or don't eat good food. We don't care if it rains or it's sunny. We don't care if we get sick or healthy. We can handle pain. We can do all these things. But there is still somebody. There's still somebody-ness. And that force of the universe, that statement, your singing and dancing is no other than the voice of the Dharma. When you meet a being who is cooked, there is only the Dharma. It is no different than a tree or a river.
So what are they referring to as Dharma? Dharma, again, the Dharmic religions. Dharma is the central concept in these Indian religions, where it's sort of, I hate when people mess me. I get emails from Indians. You'd be surprised actually how frequent I get emails from Indians. And they'll say stuff like, yeah, I see that you're, talking about logos. Don't you know that we already have that? It's called Dharma in Hinduism. And Dharma is really just this idea that everybody has their own purpose, their own place. One of the famous Hindu texts, the Bhagavad Gita, is about Arjuna and Krishna. Krishna is a Hindu avatar. And Krishna is this deity who comes to Arjuna, who's this warrior. And Arjuna is on a chariot and he's getting ready to go to battle, but he's feeling conflicted because the people he's getting ready to fight are friends and family. But he's of the warrior caste, the caste system, Brahmins moving down, which is actually racial. Did you guys know this, that the caste system, the Indo-Europeans who actually founded what we would call Buddhism, the Vedic tradition, were light-skinned. They're Indo-Europeans. Right. And so when we're talking about Indo-Europeans, we're basically talking about Persians, Armenians, and then everybody we would consider European or white, Slavs, Greeks, Italians, French, English. They all branch from the same linguistic tree, the Indo-European linguistic tree, and they all have a similar genetic origin. Well, it's the Indo-Europeans that actually found what we would consider the origins of Hinduism in what they considered a book that was revealed called the Vedas, very, very old. And the Bhagavad Gita is trying to describe to Arjuna that even though they were your friends and your family members that you're going to war against, your dharma, your purpose, your caste, your role in society, again, all process relationship, is to fight. And that basically the dharma wheel that controls all causation is going to move in the right direction as long as you go to battle. So, you know, who are you really going to kill? Your friends and your family are going to reincarnate in the next life. You're really not killing them. It's not a bad thing. Just go ahead and go to war and kill them. That's the basis essentially of the Bhagavad Gita, emphasizing this dharmic understanding of purpose and your role in it. So when he's talking about everything is dharma, when you see someone, it's just their dharma. He's talking about like there's no need to become more. There's no need to desire to transition oneself, to change life or move in a different direction, because really you are essentially just your dharma. You already are fulfilled. You just have to, again, transcend the ego of the mind that is preventing you from realizing this.
There's nobody home. And in that sense, we are babysitting our own psychological death. And whether our physical death is coincidental with that will be of no relevance to us. Can you imagine that one? Because when there is no self-conscious entity, what difference does it make whether the body or that body is there or not? And when I try...
Because from my understanding, self-consciousness doesn't arise without a body, at least on this side of eternity. So, Ram Dass, show me an example of someone who has consciousness that has no body. I'd be very, very curious to see that. So from our Orthodox perspective, we believe in a form of Aristotelian hylomorphism. Aristotle was the first to kind of put forth this idea that the soul actually gives form to the body. So the soul of a lion gives form to a lion body. The soul of man gives form to the body of a man. And it's the soul then that gives form to the thing that the soul is indwelling. Orthodoxy maintains this sort of framework. So you see that this annihilation of self, this annihilation of it's really sort of lends credence to this movement towards transhumanism. You don't need your body. You just need your conscious awareness, and we can upload consciousness. Don't you know that? We just have to take a map of your brain.
To make sense out of the things that my guru has said, it only makes sense when I do not try to project a solid self-conscious entity into them. Now, the reason that I have to talk about this stuff, which in some way seems a million miles beyond us, is because of the perspective-giving nature of this discussion. That what often happens is you and I have made great gains in terms of awareness. I mean, most of us have been through a lot of stuff now. And those that haven't still have tuned in and done it very quickly. And so this group is within the cultural framework, a relatively conscious group of people. You are more aware of the ecological implications of your acts. You're more aware of the social implications. You can be expected to be more of what would be called a conscious being. And it all starts to get lighter and easier and more playful and more dancing and more delightful. And I mean,
it's just, isn't it amazing? Once you realize you don't have a self, everything just becomes so much better. It's just so much. It's called nihilism. Actually, it's plaguing the Western world. And remember, this lecture right here is in the late 1970s. 1970s. It's difficult for us in 2025 to realize how much was transformed in American culture during the 1960s counterculture. The appeal for Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, to go around doing lectures like this in the 1970s was not there in the 1950s and 40s. Now, I'm not saying we need to return back to, Leave It to Beaver times, but my point is the loss of the Christian fabric that ran through America itself, and how this all just this wishy-washy spirituality. You just have to realize that it's just all conscious awareness, and then you can dance, and then you can make love, and you can just express yourself in the ways that you want, and everything will be wonderful and bliss.
I'm drifting through life. I must say, it's really, as heavy as it gets, it's still light. And I hang out with dying people all the time, and it's still a blast. And I deal with people with excruciating pain, and it's still okay. And there's a sway in which it's spacious and beautiful, and there is that awareness that surrounds it all, and there is an open heart, and there is flow, and it's beautiful. And there is a tendency to say, well, that was pretty good. We really have it together. That's great. I just want to keep this chilling spectacle of where the game leads in my consciousness and in yours. Because I think that what has happened for many of us.
But thoughts are an illusion, Ram Dass. How do you know what you're thinking is true? Thoughts are an illusion.
Is that we have been somewhat reductionistic about the spiritual journey.
I find it funny because the skepticism that undergirds Buddhism, I would argue that in many ways is incredibly reductionistic.
And we've tended to say it's nothing other than bloop. But the words that characterize the Sufi tradition of towards the one, the return to the one, means just that, return to the one. And when there is one, there are not two. And your self-consciousness only exists so long as there are two. It does not exist in the one. God does not know itself. It only knows itself through duality, and duality has inherent within it suffering.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely refuse that, because our God is a Trinity. So God does know himself. God is person, three persons with one essence. This framework only can make any sense if you believe in a sort of panpsychic or conscious monism. And therefore, there is no delineation. And then he can get away with it by saying, therefore, the only way you have conscious experience is in the duality of the opposite. So it allows something to be perceived. But you are God experiencing its own creation. No. You are made in the image of God to transcend to a higher reality, but the metaphysical epistemological basis of creation is created by God, and God is not some abstract consciousness that's experiencing itself through creation. No, God, we are panentheistic as Orthodox. God is outside space and time, yet he's also penetrated space and time, and he still exists in space and time with us. But we are not some sort of monistic conscious worldview. No. And so I wanted to highlight that section because it highlights the paradigmatic differences that we're talking about. Now, this guy right here, Chris Neibauer, he's a PhD. He has I guess a somewhat popular book. I don't know how popular it is, but it's on Amazon, and it's called No Self, No Problem. And it's about explaining Buddhism to Westerners by use of neuroscience. So that's where I got into these emergent understandings of mind and consciousness out of the neuroscientific community, that there's great appeal by some of these Westerners to utilize neuroscience to argue in favor of, again, this idea of no self, right? So here's his argument, his 3-minute argumentation why no self, no problem, use yourself, lose your problems. Yeah, if I lost myself and my responsibilities, I probably wouldn't have any problems.
I want to take you through a short exercise so you can feel for yourself what is meant by the phrase, no self, no problem. So Buddhism is very old and cognitive science is very new, but they both arrived at the conclusion that the self is an illusion. And it's an illusion that comes about by, well, a thinking problem. So imagine, we'll just ask a question. What does anxiety, depression, narcissism, low self-esteem all have in common? Well, they're all thinking problems. And it's not to say that there's something wrong with thinking in and of itself. It's just that some thoughts are problematic. And I want to cover at least a few of these. The first problematic thought is that, and just it's just a little rough, but the first problematic thought is that for every thought, there must be a thinker behind the thought. Okay. Now, cognitive science has shown that the brain makes many false conclusions, and this is just another one of them. But another problematic.
So science has showed that there is neural noise. That's what they refer to as neural noise in the brain. And therefore, there is no thinking self. That's a non sequitur. It's a logical non sequitur. What? Just because there's brain firing or random brain firing that the scientist himself doesn't know how it correlates to other activities doesn't mean that there's not a thinker behind thoughts. What? What? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Every thought has a thinker. Now, we as Orthodox Christians say some thoughts are not yours, but they are temptations. They are logismi by the demons. They're trying to tempt you and seduce you into doing something against God's will. But come on, there's still a thinker there, and there's still a free will agent that can decide whether to engage in the thought or not. And that's where he totally misses it. And I brought this up in the determinism debate I had on the Whatever podcast, is that the whole argument for determinism and based on this neural noise and that the brain's kind of just firing. And that's what he's arguing, is that the brain's not really you. Don't worry about so much on the brain. You got to calm the brain down. Well, it showed that actually the threshold potential, that there's multiple now neuroscientific studies that can demonstrate that somebody can actually choose not to do an action despite it's gone through what's called the neural threshold potential. Random example, maybe I want to open my hand, like Alan Watts said. I want to open my hand, and maybe cognitively, if they were to scan my brain, because I've already decided I'm going to open my hand, has already begun firing to demonstrate that I'm going to open my hand, but then I can choose not to open my hand. And that has disproved determinism. This is based on neuroscientific studies, because it totally shatters the determinist paradigm. Because for determinism, once the neural noise and once the threshold is reached, you have no choice but to do the action. But that's now been proven false.
Thought is that of ownership. In other words, some thoughts we own in the same way that we own a car, and others that we ignore. And what is ownership really when it comes down to it, but just another thought? I mean, I can get in my car and drive away, and the only reason I can do that is because everyone kind of agrees that I own that. And so,
what? You can think about getting in your car and going down the road, but the only reason you can do that is because we all agree that what? What?
when we really come down to what ownership is, it's just a collective thought agreement. But that can be very powerful. Consider the difference between I am depressed versus there's depression in the skull.
I mean, what a dumb analogy. He should have just said walk down the sidewalk. He's making an argument that the dubiousness of owning thoughts and whether you actually think, because we all agree that you own a car. Huh? What? I mean, this is, you know, God bless the guy. Maybe he's a really sincere. I mean, he's very, very sincere about his belief in Buddhism and the lack of any sort of soul. But what? We don't own our thoughts because that's just another thought, just like him thinking about getting in his car and driving down the road is a social consensus that he owns the car. How does what? How does that relate to owning thoughts and whether you have free will to decide about, you know, thoughts that you choose to engage with and thoughts that you choose not to engage? What?
I am anxious versus there is anxiety. How about I want revenge versus there are thoughts of revenge in the skull. And so it's kind of like, imagine you're at the airport, and when you go to the airport, you pick up your luggage. You pick up some and you leave the rest and you drag those around. That's exactly what we do with thoughts. And we don't have to. Imagine if you go to the airport and you just passively watch the luggage go round and round. Well, imagine if you do this with your thoughts. If you do, you might find that you'll have an insight that the thinker behind the thoughts is itself just another thought. It's like going back to the airport and imagining some piece of luggage, believing that it's going to pick up and leave with other pieces of luggage. It's just not going to work.
That's so okay. So we've already talked about how the existence of the self is essential for the potential for knowledge claims, the existence of being, metaphysics, and then moral culpability and responsibility regarding ethics. So are those just thoughts? Are those just thoughts that if we just let our minds think, but we don't attach ourselves to any of our thoughts, if we don't think about the thoughts we think, then we'll realize that the self is a thought. The self isn't a thought because based on the laws of logic, there has to be, if you believe in any sort of traditional metaphysics, there has to be an essence, nature, or substance ontology to the individual. That is not a thought. You can say, maybe I thought my way to that conclusion, but then we believe in truth and facts. And that just has to be the case if we're going to maintain a paradigm in which knowledge is possible.
So imagine an empty airport, empty except for personality, less awareness. So consciousness without any particular personality to it. See, most of our problems are our problems. When was the last time, if you're honest, when was the last time you stayed awake all night worrying about someone else's problems? Maybe I can put it this way. Back in the 80s, I had a terrible beater car, and it would burn oil so bad that if I came up to a red light, it would just be this big smoke cloud, and everyone around me would roll up their windows, and the brakes didn't work, so I'd always have to think ahead. And there are all kinds of other issues with it, and it's just filled with all kinds of problems. Well, so much that one day I just drove to a junkyard and got $50 for it. And I remember very explicitly the feeling I had when I was walking away, because once I dumped that car, all the problems went along with it. And that's exactly the same as when you see through the idea of the self.
So based on his understanding, as long as you just forget that you are a self, then all the problems attached with your mortgage, your relationships, your wife, your family, your job, it all goes away. Don't you realize it's all just a thought, guys? Don't you realize all the problems and responsibilities and duties you have in your life? It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Yes, MGM Studios, that is it. That's it. That's all he's giving you. Sir, go back to uninstantiated consciousness. How can you have that? Oh, man. Wow. A chair throwing Italian throws in 5, says, I'll never be hungry if I remove the stomach. Give me PhD, please. Yeah, that's literally the logic behind this. Oh, you have a bunch of problems in your life tied with who you believe you are? Just forget who you are and your problems go away too. Just like the clunker car that I had when I took it to the junkyard. You just got to take yourself and throw it in the junkyard and all your problems will go away. What? It's so stupid. It's so stupid. We had a super chat come in over on Streamlabs. Brendan throws in $3, says the problem with reincarnation and samsara as presupposed by Buddhism is that there's no true resolution of the soul in a cyclical paradigm. True. This is the root of why Buddhism cannot know or explain which life or which stage one happens to inhabit within. Of course it doesn't. No, it's totally cyclical. And they can't even, I still find the claims that the culmination of karma is incarnating through the various life stages. To me, that's still a dubious idea regarding the Anatman. As I said, I would argue that they basically slip in a mini I or a mini self in their claims of reincarnation itself, the cycle of samsara. So yeah, it's totally a cyclical, self-refuting paradigm, essentially. It really is. So guys, if you support this work, please, we're up at, please help me get to my goal of 20 super chats. I'm raising funds for my wife and I to get down to DebateCon in Nashville, and then our flight or our drive. We have a massive drive down to Florida, Palm Coast, St. Augustine, with Jay, Father Deacon, Metropolitan Jonah, Father Vladimir. So if you appreciate content like this, you appreciate the work I put towards my streams, if you're able, please be supportive and help me. Just whether it be $1, $5, whatever it may be. We're halfway there to my stream goal. So if you guys could help me out, really appreciate that. I need to start doing more grifting like Jim Bob and Andrew. I need to threaten you guys that I'm not going to show the next video until you guys send in 3 super chats. We got Sam Harris right here. We can't move forward until I get 3 super chats, right? Isn't that how the grifting works? I got a grift. Hey, whoa, it works. The grifting works. Shout out to Justin Hinley. He just threw in $20, says, have fun at DebateCon. Thank you so much, Justin. God bless you, bro. God. Give me money should be a great start. Thanks, Mojo. I gotta take lessons of the grifting from Jim Bob and Andrew. They just hold the stream hostage. Like, we're not moving forward until I get, till we get to a certain level. So thank you so much, Justin. God bless you, brother, for the $20 super chat. Truly appreciate it. Can we at least get to 12? Can we at least get to 12? Can somebody help us get to 12 out of 20 super chats? The grift must continue. Exactly, VP. The grift must continue. I got Sam Harris and Andrew Huberman lined up. Sam Harris talking about psychedelics and his ego death. Yeah, yo, Jim Bob. Do I sound like Jim Bob holding the stream hostage? Don't forget yourself, forget the world, forget the passions. Yeah, pretty much. There we go. Shout out to Gorilla Biscuits. Thank you so much, brother. No comment. Generous $5. Thank you very much, Gorilla Biscuits. Appreciate it. One more, and I'll go to the next video. Can somebody help me out with my grifting? Help the grift. Support the grift, guys. Support the grift. There's Hunter begging for super chats. ... Pathetic. Apparently it's part of the profession, Hunter. Mojo says, I already spent all my birthday money on my costume. Oh, is today your birthday? What costume are you wearing? What do you guys celebrate Halloween? I haven't celebrated Halloween since I was in an undergrad in college. Thomas throws in another $5. Thank you so much, Thomas. If it's another tongue-sucking video from the llama, then feel free to skip it. No more tongue-sucking videos from Dalai Lama, I promise. I promise. Oh, man. Well, thank you guys so much. We got up to 12. Appreciate it. Okay, next video. Thank you so much, Thomas, Gorilla Biscuits, Hunter, and Justin Hinley. God bless you guys. Thank you very much for the support. All right, here's Sam Harris, an atheist, a determinist, somebody who has the only thing I agree with Sam Harris on is his sentiments towards Islam. They're very similar to mine. Iron Scroll throws in 5, says, greetings from St. Nicholas Orthodox Church in Springdale, Arkansas. Oh, and I'd love to hear you speak to ancestral sin versus Parabdha karma. Well, we don't believe, and I know that Brother Augustine, Michael Witkoff, is big in defending Augustinian original sin. And so Iron Scroll, forgive me if you already understand the Orthodox position. We believe in the inheritance of the consequences of sin. We do not believe in the inheritance of guilt. So that is a delineation between the Eastern and the Western traditions of Christianity regarding ancestral sin. So there is ancestral sin regarding the consequences. We exist in a fallen world due to Adam and Eve's choices of rejecting God, but we do not inherit the guilt of Adam. We do not inherit the guilt of Adam. So, anyways, do you guys dress up for Halloween? I'm legitimately curious. I do not celebrate Halloween very, again, like I said, I can't remember even dressing up or going out on Halloween since I was 22 years old, 23 years old. I haven't been to a Halloween party in that long. So I do not. I think the wife wants to watch Hocus Pocus tonight. That's good. That's our Halloween festivities. Gorilla Biscuit. I'm dressed as a grumpy old man. The only thing more horrifying than Halloween is Reformation. Earth says they also stayed inside a lot too. Just saying. Oh, okay. Must be referring to somebody. Dano said, no, he doesn't celebrate Halloween. That's why I'm here enjoying the. Well, I'm glad you guys are here with me. God bless you all. Appreciate you being here on Halloween evening in 2025, 7:25 Eastern time. VP says, Halloween's never been a thing for me or my immediate family. Yeah. Well, you see, I have a problem. I don't mind horror films. I don't watch them very often, but I do like to be scared. I just don't have that. I don't get that feeling very often. When I was a kid, that was the one thing I liked about Halloween was the spookiness, the ghost and the sort of spiritual context behind Halloween. But I've noticed as I got as an adult, I'm not really into it. And then my wife, she cannot watch anything scary. Like literally, she will not watch anything Halloween beyond Hocus Pocus. She can't watch people get killed. She can't watch any physical violence, and she refuses to watch anything regarding like demons or the devil. So I can, if we're going to watch a movie together, it has to be something. Yeah. And there she is right there. And then I'm in his life now. I'm scared. Yeah, exactly. She does not let me watch anything that could potentially scare her. It's unfortunate. MGM Studios says Simpsons Halloween special. She would probably be open to that. She likes The Simpsons. That actually might be something we can watch. I wouldn't mind watching, there's like the movie The Witch. Thank you so much, MGM Studios. God bless you, bro. I have not seen it. I had an Orthodox gentleman ask me if I had seen The Witch because he would love to see me and BLA do a video, like movie breakdown, like we've done on previous films. And I haven't seen The Witch, but I was told by him it's pretty spooky. It's out there. Have you guys seen this movie? I've never seen it. I would like to watch it, but I can't watch it with my wife. Yeah. Yeah. Halloween is demonic. I don't blame her. Well, that's actually something that my wife has mentioned, that Halloween is like way more celebrated in America than in Germany. And so she was talking to me, like we just walked through the store to get groceries and or watch all the houses with decorations. And she was kind of blown away by how Americans really, really get into Halloween. And she feels like there's a demonic component. There definitely is. The way, all they promote is like witches, demons, skeletons, and we're Orthodox, so we're not afraid of skeletons, but there is, it just feels like it's not so wholesome. I could be wrong. You guys correct me. Do you guys feel like Halloween has moved from more wholesome stuff to more demonic? It kind of does feel that way to me. I'll agree. Dennis Berkey over on Dono Chats throws in $4, says Brian Van Norden could be a good guy to debate on Buddhist philosophy / metaphysics. He is, however, a basic turbo lib, so bringing up politics may spook him. All right, let me write that down. Brian Van Norden. I I'd be totally open to do a debate with a Buddhist. I've never heard of this guy, Brian Van Norden. Do you have a YouTube channel? Oh, okay. Brian Van Norden. Here, you guys can see what I'm doing. Oh, this is like an older guy. Yeah, this is an older gentleman. Okay, he's got 9,000 on. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I would be interested in doing a debate or a conversation. I mean, if he's Buddhist, he already kind of loses by definition just because of the paradigm. But yeah, I'd definitely be open to that for sure. And let's see, Paul throws in 10. Thank you so much, Paul. He says, did you cover the Mind and Life Institute? It's a Dalai Lama, i.e. CIA-backed org that promotes neuroscience, Buddhism dialogue. This stuff is so cringe looking back after finding the Orthodox Church. No, I did not bring up or cover the Mind and Life Institute. I only brought up the Dalai Lama because I had a clip of him explaining the Anatman. But after referencing the Dalai Lama, I can't not think about him asking the little boy to suck his tongue. So that's when we watched it. But yeah, it's pretty well established, the Dalai Lama's connection with American intelligence, Western intelligence agencies. You know, I mean, the irony is he's like yammering about climate change and he flies on a massive, massive private jet. I mean, it's like Air Force One. It's like a huge airliner, you know, and then he'll go somewhere and tell people about climate change, similar to the Pope. But thank you, Paul. No, I did mention that. Thanks for throwing that in there. And I did highlight the convergence between neuroscience and Buddhism. I mean, that's where a lot of the Western justification, we're going to, you know, hear some of this moving forward. So, all right, let's get into Sam Harris. So I apologize. Let's get into Sam Harris now. So here's Sam Harris on David Huberman talking about ego death and psychedelics.
How is it that psilocybin in particular and high dose psilocybin and the ego dissolution that people talk about on psilocybin, how do you think that lines up with some of the experiences that you've been describing for a adequate meditation practice? Because that's something that I did not experience on MDMA. In fact, if anything, I experienced for the first time what really feeling like a isolated container was, and the difference between and how empathy and being bounded, having, in other words, good boundaries and empathy could be symbiotic. I experienced that for the first time there. And I do think that there is learning inside of these states that translates into everyday life when one is not on these states. And the last thing I'll say is, no, I don't feel the impulse to go and do 20 more MDMA sessions. I think that the 3 as part of this study were very effective for me. And, you know, as they say, if you hear the calling again, you might do it. But I'm very curious about psilocybin in particular and this notion of ego dissolution, because we've been talking about the self.
Well, so there are different ways in which the sense of self can be eroded or expanded, or there's lots of experiences that can still have a kind of center to them, but be, you know, very novel and transformational. And one can reify those as a kind of goal state, right? And it's sort of there's a concept in Buddhism that I think is useful. It doesn't translate well to English, or it can set up.
Sower Cookie says Harris is looking rough. Yeah, I don't think COVID did. I don't think it did well on him. It seems like it's really worn him down. You know, he was wrong about the vax over and over and over and over. He's constantly in fight. He's wasn't he kind of like Howard Stern? Like he refused to leave his house for a pretty significant period of time. Like, yeah, he's Sam Harris is the goonest of all gooners. Yeah, he took a beating during the COVID period. I don't think he's fully recovered yet at all.
False associations in English that are unfortunate. But so there's a concept of emptiness in Buddhism, which sounds, again, kind of gray and dispiriting in English, but it's its sort of cognate terms are things like unconditioned, unconstrained, open, centerless, right? So there's a and that is, so when I'm talking about non-duality, when I'm talking about the loss of a sense of subject, and then what's left in Buddhism, they would often describe what's left as emptiness, but emptiness is not a something. It's not importantly, it's not the same thing as unity, right? So it's not a oneness.
And so I just want to highlight something. So that's Sam Harris saying that, right? Which he's not wrong. Now check this out.
The Buddhist concept of no fixed self is often misunderstood. What it's really pointing to is not that you don't exist, but that you don't exist in quite the way you think you do. You're not as fixed and you're not as separate. In fact, you're deeply, deeply connected to all beings, to all life.
So that's the exact opposite of what Sam Harris said. And Sam Harris is actually more accurate than she is. So that was like some woman online who promotes Buddhism. But I thought, how funny is that? The woman sees like the emptiness as, oh my God, it's different than you think. The emptiness is actually that you're deeply, deeply connected to something. He's like, actually, the emptiness in Buddhism is not like a pure unity, which he's right. He's actually more accurate than she is. It's not about unity, right? This isn't about a unification with total unity. It's about the realization that there's nothing, and inside that nothing, there's literally nothing. It's not a unity with nothingness. So actually, to give Harris credit here, he's describing the concept of shunyata and nothingness more accurately than the woman Buddhist.
That's right, because it's what's left when the center drops out of experience. It's not like you are suddenly merged with the cup, right? But now, granted, this is where psilocybin and other psychedelics can give a false impression of I think what the goal is. You can have seeming merge.
So what he's saying is, on psychedelics, this idea like, oh, bro, we're all one, man. Dude, I was freaking lit on like half a strip of LSD. And I realized, bro, that you and me are like the same person, just having different experiences, bro. Seriously, man. Like, what I realized is that I think I'm myself and you think you're yourself, but really we're just like consciousness, bro. Like, we're like consciousness connected, man. And for real, it's like, it's like we're all one, man. It's like if everybody just took psilocybin mushrooms, like there'd be no freaking wars, bro. Like, capitalism and consumerism would totally be gone, man, because everybody realized we're all one. And he's highlighting that the psychedelic experience of pure unity is a sort of misnomer for what the emptiness of Buddhism is getting at, which, again, I would say, hey, Sam, you're actually right there. You're actually pretty good.
Merging experience. You can have unity experiences on psychedelics, which can be quite powerful, especially with nature, with other people, and with nature, where you can just feel like, the energy of your body becomes incredibly vivid and powerful. It's just like you're just, everything is just, buzzing with, life energy. And then when you touch another person's hand, or you touch a tree, there can be this sort of continuity of energy, which can be this overwhelming experience of, and again, this is just a 20 megaton change in the contents of consciousness, right? This is a non-ordinary state of consciousness, but like, this is give some indication of how this happens. Back in the day when I was in my 20s and I was experimenting with this was LSD, but some friends and I decided, we had this brilliant idea. We would camp above Muir Woods, and then take some LSD at dawn, and then walk down.
If you guys haven't been to Muir National Park in the Bay Area, highly recommend it. It's an incredible, incredible experience. Beautiful national park, the biggest redwoods in the world. I did not take LSD when I went there to see nature, and went with a buddy. I was actually becoming Orthodox at that time. It was right before I moved back. But it is a great national park. Anybody who's been there, shout out in the chat. Let me know if you've been to Muir National Park. It's actually quite beautiful.
Like a mile, I think, from the campsite into the actual proper grove of trees, and commune with the giant redwoods, the tallest trees on earth. And so we dropped the acid at dawn and we start walking, but the acid came on, almost immediately. And we got nowhere near the woods, and we got stopped by a tree that was just like.
Yeah, Mojo said he's been to Joshua. I've been to Joshua Tree too. That's more in the desert near Palm Springs, California. But if you're up in the Bay Area, Muir National Park, I highly recommend. Beautiful, beautiful experience.
Like an ordinary, 20-foot oak tree, like the most boring tree in the world. And that tree absorbed like the next 6 hours of our conscious attention, because it was just, it was the tree of life. I mean, it was just, there could be no better tree. So we're talking about non-ordinary states of consciousness wherein a merging with life and with the world is possible. And that is so I'm not saying that kind of experience isn't possible, but there's a sort of expanded self reification. It is a kind of ego dissolution, but there's a kind of egoity that sort of goes along for the ride as well, or can go along for the ride. And the real insight into emptiness, the real sort of centerless, center of the bullseye, is a recognition that in some ways equalizes all experiences. I mean, again, it's just as available now in this ordinary, podcasting experience as it is when you're merging hands-on with an oak tree, and on 400 micrograms of acid, and this is the whole universe. And so it's the equality of those two experiences that this concept of emptiness captures, which a concept of oneness doesn't quite capture, because oneness is really this peak experience of being dragged out of your somethingness into a much bigger somethingness, right? Emptiness is just no center, right? And then everything is in its own place, right? There's still sights and sounds and sensations and thoughts and feelings, but there's no center, and there's no clinging to anything. There's no clinging to identity. There's no clinging to the good stuff. There's no resistance to the bad stuff. So pleasant and unpleasant get sort of strangely equalized. And there's this it's very expansive, and most importantly, it doesn't block anything. So yeah, if for whatever reason, if your nervous system is set up to have the, oh my God, I'm now merging with the tree experience, that's possible from the state of no center, right? And on my, my recent, now not so recent, 3 years ago, it was right before COVID, but my last, big psychedelic experience, I was very much experiencing that, whereas, insofar as I, at the peak, there was no me to remember any of this stuff, but, insofar as I could experiment with, is this really different from anything else? There is a kind of equalizing to the emptiness recognition, even in the presence of a completely transformed neurophysiology. And so that's again, there's a point of contact. I mean, the real point of contact between psychedelics and meditation for me is, but for my experiences on psychedelics, I don't think there's just no way I would have had the free attention to be interested in the project at all. And there are other aspects to the project. It's not just having this insight into selflessness. It's all of the ethical ramifications of that. It's just like, what kind of person do you want to be? What are your values? What is a good life altogether when you are talking about relationships and political engagement and the changes you can make in the world or not make? Or it's just, what kind of person do you want to be? There's a much larger consideration. And I mean, as you just
notice how he went from Buddhism's concept of shunyata, total emptiness, the rejection that there's a self, to talking about how the psychedelic experience of sort of phenomenological unity, the experience of pure unity, It's kind of a misnomer, but the reason why you experience that is because you realize there is no self. It decenters you from your subjective self, and that you then can relate to the tree, like the mystical, magical experience he had in Murr National Park. But then he talked about how once you're in that space, there really is no good or bad or delineation between things. You just exist. And in that state, you're very open. Well, that's exactly why he can't make moral claims in his atheist framework. And he tries to come up with these sort of secular arguments for morality that kind of highlights some of the debates he had. Was it 2018, 19, 17 with Jordan Peterson and stuff? So he tries to put forth like this socially constructed morality. He demeans Islam, which, hey, fair enough there. But then he also hates Christianity, and he hates really every religion besides Judaism. But you see the internal contradictions here, right? So now he's talking about how the realization of no self allows you to become a new, transform yourself into a new person. Well, that's not the Buddhist concept. The Buddhist concept, if you truly realize there's an emptiness of the self, is that you need to renounce the world, bro. You don't move into a higher understanding of self. That's like the opposite direction.
Discovered, an experience on MDMA can really both expand your model of what is possible and what is desirable, what is normative. I mean, just what kind of self do you want to be in the world? And
well, don't you want to be a no self? Isn't the goal to be a no self in the world, not to be a new self? So, all right, next one. And this is kind of the last major video I have for you guys. So, guys, help me get to. Oh, I got two more actually. This one's the guy who claims that he's enlightened.
Hopefully, I'll do that.
This guy right here on the right. Look at the name of this section. What's it like to be enlightened? This guy. So the guy on the left is the host of the channel, Joseph Everett, and this Daniel Ingram wrote a book on. He showed it at one point. It's like a book on basically how Buddhism helps you realize about, the realization of no self. This dude is a goofball, right? This dude is a total goofball. But this whole section right here is what it's like to be enlightened. If you're enlightened, you're not going to be telling everybody what it's like to be enlightened. You're probably not going to tell anybody that you are enlightened. So we got this one to get through. This was actually sent to me by Gordon. And just for Gordon, who sponsored the stream, shout out to Gordon. God bless you, brother. He sent me this channel, this Jim Newman. I looked through some of the stuff. It kind of correlates to everything else that we already highlighted. I thought those were just better videos to watch. It's some of his stuff's kind of dry. This was one on psychedelics, meditation, enlightenment. Essentially hits on what we've already discussed. And there's the Dalai Lama. So I want to get through this video, and then I want to get through this section of him telling us what it's like to be enlightened. Please tell me. So, guys, if you can help me get to, we have, 13 minutes left to get 4 more super chats and help me reach my goal today, guys. If you could find the generosity in your heart on this Halloween evening in 2025, 4 more super chats, and I reach my goal of 20. If anybody's out there and is generous enough, would greatly appreciate that.
I really enjoyed watching them in meditation, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and so on, and watching which ones my mind wants to grab onto to make a self and which ones it doesn't. And I noticed like the sound of the wind, bird song, that doesn't seem to be me. And over the last month since I was here in October.
MGM, you don't like the Dalai Lama, bro? What's wrong with the Dalai Lama, man? What's wrong with the Dalai Lama, bro? You don't like the Lama? What's wrong with you? This is a man of peace. This man's illuminated. He's the 16th reincarnation. Did you guys know that the Dalai Lama is believed to be reincarnated? My eyes. I'm going to force you guys to see this until I get 3 more super chats. The grift must continue. The grift must continue. Diddly Lama. That's the best one. VP Ortho Diddley. Oh my gosh. That is so funny. That is so funny. Thank you. H. Brazzi throws in 5. Thank you so much, brother. He says tithing. That's right. Get your tithes in for Church of the Eternal Logos. You know, the secretary actually keeps a track of all this stuff behind the sanctuary. So thank you so much, H. Brazzi. And Justin Henley throws in another $2. Thank you so much, Justin. He says, defy DPH and donate through Streamlabs. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And goals reached. H. Brazzi throws in another 5. Thank you so much, brother. And Pat J. Fussy throws in 5. W. Llama tongue. Oh, gosh. No, the Dalai Lama's tongue is not a W. I don't know what you're into, Pat. Anyways, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support. God bless you guys. I really do appreciate it. All right. Let's listen to this boomer. Ask this guy. So Rupert Spira, this dude actually has a huge channel. It's like 600,000 some subs. This dude's massive. Here he is. He's a older guy. He's an international author and speaker of non-duality. And so Gordon actually sent me his stuff. And so he's studied the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is the non-dual tradition in Hinduism, and the tantric tradition of Kashmir Shaivism through Dr. Francis Rolls and Shantanada Saraswati, P.D. Uspensky, Krishnamurti, Rumi, Ramana Maharshi. So it's just like all the 20th century sort of Eastern mystical thinkers. So this is the guy who's getting ready to respond to the boomer, asking him questions about memory and separate self.
Who knows, even my body sensations are feeling less and less like.
Oh, major thank you. Misplaced Burrito throws in 14. Thank you so much, brother. Says Llama Secession. Thank you, brother. Really appreciate the support, man. God bless you all. Thank you so much for your guys' support. Smash that like. Really appreciate you guys being here. All right. Let's now listen to Rupert's response to the boomer American.
Like they're a me. The one thing that really seems like a me still are memories. The object of a memory, they seem to so convincingly create a me and time and my past. And other people agree that I was there. And so I would love to be able to simply let memory.
How mentally distorted do you have to be that, I have these memories. It reinforces the self. And, I was there. People tell me I was there. Bro, what?
Memories move through me as easily as like birdsong does and not create the illusion of a separate me. Can you tell me anything about that?
Oh my God. Look at the mindfulness of this man. Look at the way he takes in the question and ponders it and thinks about the revivification and reification of the self due to our perpetual memory. How is the man going to respond?
In a way, Michael, you're right to infer the continuity of identity from memory.
Okay, so just watch. So, okay. All he did was reaffirm the guy's question. You know what? That was a really, really insightful question that you spawned about the perpetuation of memory.
But it's not the continuity of your identity as a person that memory validates. It's the continuity of yourself as consciousness that memory validates. So as long as you use memory to confirm the continuity of yourself as consciousness, then that's the proper use of memory. But the mind has appropriated that and uses memory to confirm the identity of yourself as a separate entity.
What? So it's wrong to use your memory if you reflect. Remember when I had that fun time with my friends and I was a distinct person from my friends? You see, Brian, that is the wrong way to use your memory. The memory is properly used when it is in the stream of universal consciousness. And as universal consciousness, you can reflect on conscious experience. But if you believe, Brian, that yourself as a person has memories and were doing things with your friends on that great, wonderful evening, that is a false illusion, Brian. That is suffering, Brian. DPH Buddhist ASMR. I need to do that. Brian, my friend, Brian. Memory. When you reflect on your memories and you think, I, Brian, remember when I did that one thing. Brian, that was never you, Brian. Brian, that's not who you are. Who you are is consciousness. Universal consciousness. And Brian, whenever you reflect on those memories, Brian, you're reflecting on a self that never existed.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, Rupert, you're right. I am doing that. That guy's sitting there. He's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Because let's take the memory of breakfast this morning. If breakfast this morning had not taken place in the same consciousness that this experience is taking place in, what would connect the two?
Right,
The reason you can get to your bedroom from here is because this room and your bedroom take place in the same space. There's a connection between them. If your bedroom was in a different space from this space, you wouldn't be able.
Is Brian living at this theater? What? It's in the same space. What? What?
Able to get there. You can only get there because you travel through the same. The only reason you can get to your memory of breakfast is because your mind travels through the same consciousness. So your memory of breakfast doesn't confirm your identity as a separate self at the breakfast table. Your memory of breakfast confirms your real identity as the consciousness in which this experience appears and the experience of breakfast appeared. It is the continuity of consciousness that enables memory to take place, not the continuity of yourself as a separate identity.
What? Can somebody please show me, out of all these Buddhist New Age thinkers, a person who's conscious that doesn't have a body? What? Sour Cookie says, I am my bacon and eggs. No. Sour Cookie. Sour Cookie. No. To say you are your bacon and eggs is to miss the fact that you're not the person. You're not the bacon and you're not the eggs. You are the consciousness having an experience through the continuum of space and time. But there's only the present moment. Sower cookie. Sower cookie. You are falling for the false perception of self. You think you are the bacon and the eggs? Sower cookie, you need to transcend the scrambled brain like the eggs you had for breakfast, sower cookie. What are you doing? You are the consciousness that sees the bacon and the eggs. Sour cookie, you are the consciousness. You are the consciousness behind the bacon and the eggs.
Wow. Okay. And so it doesn't confirm the continuity of myself as a separate being, and it doesn't confirm the continuity of something called time then either.
No. When you're absolutely right. When the mind looks at the consciousness in which this experience takes place, and when the same mind looks at the consciousness in which breakfast takes place, what is it that exists between? So you've got consciousness, the space of consciousness in which this experience takes place, the same space of consciousness in which breakfast took place, and between the two experiences there is consciousness. Yeah. When the mind looks at that consciousness, it sees it through the filter of its own limitations and perceives it as time. There's no time between this experience and breakfast. There's consciousness between this experience and breakfast. But when the mind looks at consciousness, it sees it through its distorted lens of thinking and perceiving and says there's time and space between.
Imagine being in the audience and this guy's trying to convince you that space and time don't exist, that they are just figments of your conscious experience. What? What? No. Brian, don't you understand? Time and space, they don't exist, Brian. Brian, don't you understand? You made up time and space, Brian. From breakfast to here right now, Brian. It's the false understanding. It's because the lenses of perception say that the bacon and eggs are real. Time and space doesn't exist, Brian. Don't you understand it? It's all consciousness.
In this experience and that experience, there's no time and space between any experience. It all takes place in consciousness, and consciousness has no dimensions. It's the mind.
So that's total just rhetoric. Okay. Rupert Spira, can you show me that consciousness has no dimensions and that consciousness does not exist, I guess, within space and time? Of course he can't. Of course, this is just him saying it. It's just him saying that.
That expands consciousness and makes it appear in accordance with its own limitations. The mind superimposes time and space onto the reality of our experience.
I think I got it.
This guy has no idea what he says. Time and space doesn't exist? I thought we're in the space-time continuum. Huh. I guess it's all consciousness.
I think. Wow. Yeah.
This guy has no idea what he's saying. He has... It's like, yeah, now that you say it, I do realize space and time don't exist. It's all just a figment of my imagination. Yeah. Now that you've said that, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I always had this question around memory, and this makes more sense now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your intuition that memory is a confirmation of the continuity of identity is right, but the mind appropriates that intuition and believes that it's the entity that continues. No, it is consciousness that is ever present.
So it's,
and Michael,
The continuity of the person does not move through space and time, only conscious awareness. What? Dude, why are you aging then? Why is your body aging, Rupert? Clearly your body's moving through space and time. Yeah. Christopher says, bro, you're literally wearing a watch. Christopher, how dare you say this? Christopher, we've done so many workshops talking about your conscious development and your sense of awareness. Don't you know, me wearing a watch, this is part of your perception, Christopher. I'm not wearing a watch. You think I'm wearing a watch. This watch doesn't exist, Christopher. There is no time. There is no space. It's an illusion. Why, Christopher, do you put the watch on my wrist? Christopher, you're doing this to me. You're doing this to me. This is like a handcuff of time, Christopher, because you have not transcended the ego. You are handcuffing me like the police did to George Floyd. Christopher, you have your metaphorical knee on my conscious neck right now, Christopher. Christopher, stop. Christopher, stop kneeling on my neck. This watch is not real. Time is an illusion. Stop it, Christopher. You are killing me. And you're killing yourself that doesn't exist. Stop now, Christopher. Stop it.
I just want to say one thing. What I said just before that, about there being no time or space either between here and your bedroom, or between here and there's no space between here and your bedroom. It's perception that superimposes space on what is really consciousness. And likewise, there is no time between now, this experience, and breakfast. Again, it is thought that superimposes time. And you can experiment this in your own experience. In your own experience, Michael, is it not always now and here?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And now is not a moment.
Have you ever experienced a moment that is not now? Have you ever been anywhere that is not now? Have you? Yeah, actually I was at breakfast this morning. But when you're at breakfast, it was the now. It was now. Consciousness is now. This is what it means to see the bacon and the eggs. Don't you understand?
That moves through time. That now is the now is not moving. The now is stationary, and the experience of here is always the same experience.
Right. No matter where I go, here I am.
It's all so you. For consciousness, it's always now and here. Consciousness never has the experience of moving through time or space. The mind moves and superimposes time and space on consciousness. But for consciousness, it's always now and here. Not now a moment in time and here a moment in space, but now eternity. Now the infinite dimensionless presence of consciousness. It is thought and perception that superimpose time and space on consciousness. And this is consistent with our experience. It's always now.
Wait. He just said consciousness imposes it on consciousness.
Eternity. now the infinite dimensionless presence of consciousness. It is thought and perception that superimpose time and space on consciousness. And this is consistent with our experience. It's always now, or rather eternally now, and here. Have you not had that experience traveling when you feel, I'm not really going anywhere? You've flown halfway across the world and you feel it's been here all the way.
What? Brian, haven't you had the experience of being on a 22-hour plane ride where you cross the Pacific and you land in Shanghai and you realize it's always been here. It's always been now. Brian, don't you know that time that you flew to Thailand for the lady boys? They were always there, Brian. The lady boys are in the now, Brian. Meet us. Come meet me and the lady boys in the now. This is where we are. Where are you? Where are you, Brian? Don't you remember when you had the conscious experience with the lady boys? It's neither male nor female, Brian. It's consciousness, it's perception that's imposing it on the lady boy. It's not the lady boy, Brian. It's the perception of the lady boy.
Someone asks you, how long was your journey? And you have to really think about it. You just think, well, it was just now, all the time. It hasn't taken up any time. I've just always been here.
The 22-hour plane ride was never 22 hours. It was now for 22 hours. Don't you understand? Brian, don't you understand? There was never a plane ride. There was never a plane ride, Brian. You were always in Thailand with the lady boys. It's just that conscious awareness caught up to you and your perception of experience.
And that, I'm sure you've experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
He says an experience nobody's experienced. Nobody's been on a plane ride halfway around the world and thought, wow, that never happened. There was always the now. You say something that nobody relates to. I know you've had that experience. Haven't you had that experience? Tell me about the time you had the exact experience I just said. Tell me. We've all had it. I know you've had it, because if you haven't had it, you're not conscious. Tell me about the experience you had where time and space and the plane flight to Thailand for the lady boy, it never happened, Brian. Tell me. Tell me you had that experience, Brian.
And so time and space, and even Michael, as I conceive of, is just part of the VR headset that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would even go further and to suggest that the deep reason why people love to travel is because it is, when you're in your familiar everyday, you're doing your chores and your work and your house, it's easy to think that everything's so familiar that your familiar model of reality is confirmed to you over and over and over again by your friends, your colleagues. But when you travel, your model of reality is disturbed. You're experiencing new people and new tastes and so your model of reality is disturbed. There's a crack in your world, the solidity, the permanence, your world. And so we consciously put ourselves in that experience. Why? I would suggest we do this in order for our view of reality to be cracked, and to enable us to have an experience that is outside our normal limited view of reality, and to get a taste of this experience. I'm always here. I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it wakes us up.
It wakes us up. And I think that's why we loved it.
Yeah. This guy's an off-brand D-list Terrence McKenna. He's not even as insightful as Terrence McKenna. Like, for sure, he's a D-list McKenna. at least with McKenna, even though you may disagree with his stuff, he's very slow talking. Like, okay, I can understand McKenna more than I can Rupert Spira. What? What? No. Yeah, I would much rather listen to Terrence McKenna than this guy. I mean, I don't agree with much with McKenna, but gosh, it's more digestible than this stuff.
To travel, to precipitate that experience in us.
Don't you love that when you crack your experience of reality? Brian, come here. Let me crack you open. Let me crack you open, Brian. Come here. Come here. Take your pants off and bend over. Brian, I'm going to crack your experience of reality. This is all conscious experience. Let me enlighten you. Let me enlighten you. Remember, the experience with the ladyboy and the experience of now is always now. It's always been now. You've never gone anywhere, Brian. Come over here and let me crack your reality. Let me just crack you open and experience a new way of being. This is why we love to travel. This is why we travel. We travel so that our realities can be cracked open. Okay, I'm done. All right. All right. That's Rupert Spira for you. All right, the last one I got for you guys,
etc.
The last one I got for you guys is Daniel Ingram. Daniel Ingram has a popular book. Let's pull it up real quick. Let's get the exact title pulled up here. It is Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, an unusually hardcore Dharma book, revised and expanded edition from 2018. Man, he's got 200 and he's got high reviews. 201, 4.5, 4113 for a paperback book. How 620 pages. Okay, it's a bigger book, but what? $40 on Kindle. $40 for an ebook? What? This dude is raping people. Okay, so Daniel Ingram, Mr. Daniel Ingram, author. Mr. Daniel Ingram. Mr. Daniel Ingram. Mr. Daniel Ingram. All right, so this is Daniel Ingram. He has that apparently quite popular book, and he's going to tell you what it's like to be enlightened.
And I also do some things related to meditation and help run a site called the Dharma Overground. And then I'm a retired ER physician. So I've got a bunch of different there are a bunch of different Daniels, really, and they all have a different relationship to some of these topics.
Wait, so you're schizophrenic? You refer to yourself in third person and say that there's multiple of you? I would say that's psychological disassociation. Paris Alexandru over on Dono Chat throws in $10. Thank you so much, Paris. He says they always speak slowly with deep voice to emphasize, or very quickly to never catch up. Always gibberish, though. Yeah, total gibberish. Total gibberish. Rupert didn't make any sense at all. Some guy throws in $5. Thank you, some guy. Says this video feels like a mix between the interrogation in 1984 and an MK Ultra professor trying to get candidates to disassociate. Dude's creepy as F. Yeah, totally agree with that. I'm getting the same sentiment as you, some guy. So thanks. All right, let's get into Daniel here and we'll wrap things up. So you guys are going to be introduced to what it's like to be enlightened according to the multiple personalities of Daniel Ingram.
I was introduced to you and your book through a friend, and he kind of, we were just having a chat about something totally different. And I asked him what else is going on with him recently. He's like, well, I was reading this book and the author was saying that basically enlightenment does exist. There's a specific path to achieve it. And if you can practice this quite specific skill, it's essentially a skill you master, and then the endpoint for some, probably a very few some, is enlightenment, or one of the milestones on the path to it. So I think that's already a bunch to break down. I don't think too many people would think of enlightenment as an actual thing that happens to real people. So why don't you just go ahead and explain for us kind of what is different about your perception of the world now versus before you started your...
Is it just me, or do you kind of find his smile creepy? Like he's just like in a maybe he's reached enlightenment, you know? Maybe he's truly enlightened and I'm just so far down the enlightenment ladder. But the way he just sits there smiling at him.
Meditation journey.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll do that in some kind of way that gives a sense of how you might actually do this, right? So hopefully it's practical for you, whoever's watching this, that you'll be able to do something useful. And the nice thing is the description of the upgrades point very clear.
Oh my gosh, this is so on point. He looks like the one naked guy at the YMCA locker room. Have anybody been to a YMCA? There's always one guy that's just walking around totally naked right in front of everybody. Oh, dude, the most disgusting was the YMCA in Berkeley. Like, I literally saw, I kid you not. Now, I refused to shower at the YMCA, but I had to go somewhere after a workout. So I went down to the locker room. I put my clothes I was going to change into in a locker, locked it, went and worked out, came back down, went to change my clothes. I kid you not. You know, there's already rumors about the Bay Area YMCAs, right? That there's a lot of gay stuff going on. Okay. I kid you not. I'm sitting there changing and I'm putting my pants on and I look over and there's like a 20-some-year-old guy, totally butt-ass naked, with like a 60-year-old dude, totally butt-ass naked. Clearly both of them were gay. And I was so creeped out and disgusted by it. Seriously, do not go to the locker rooms in the Bay Area. You'll be surprised about what you see. I mean, that's how, like, the bathhouses is how Michel Foucault got AIDS when he was a visiting professor at Berkeley. He's the guy that doesn't play sports, just goes there for the locker room.
Clearly to straightforward steps that might make this more likely. Again, we don't know all the factors that lead to this happening. We have guesses, and the traditions all have their opinions, which are very interesting to listen to and think about. And the traditions all have their opinion.
Did he say the Christians? Is he throwing a shot? He's throwing a shot at the Christians?
All the factors that lead to this happening, we have guesses, and the traditions all have their opinions.
Oh, maybe traditions
to listen to and think about. The first things I started noticing were some more space around thoughts and increased ability to perceive phenomena arise and vanish and things like that. And emotions then starting to move through more quickly, less sort of sense of contraction into them. And eventually, as things progressed, there was this sense of awareness kind of recognizing something of it being more diffuse in the space, so that each phenomena, wherever they were, seemed to know themselves where they were. And then finally, the last remnants of something that seemed to be a separate, stable, doing, controlling, knowing entity eventually were seen as just more patterns of transient sensations, all of which knew themselves where they were and were happening very normally in a causal way, sort of inevitably and all immediately. So obviously experience is always occurring now, and this moment is very transient. And so that's what's now different, is that.
So he's enlightened. What's different is he realized that all his identities were just processes. Okay.
Before, there was this sense of a stream of intentions. Oh, I'm going to do something. that seemed to be from a doer or something that was an agent, something that stood outside of causality and looked at it as a separate thing. Well, that's the world happening there, but I'm really this thing here making decisions. When science clearly says that doesn't seem to be true. And
no, science doesn't say that. Again, what's he arguing for? Determinism? He's arguing that you don't have free will as an agent regarding the casuistry of the world, causality, casuistry. No, you definitely do. You definitely do have free will. You definitely can make choices. You definitely are an agent in the world. What the hell is he talking about? Let's back it up.
Looked at it as a separate thing. Well, that's the world happening there, but I'm really this thing here making decisions. When science clearly says that doesn't seem to be
the case. No, science actually says that you do have free will. Again, I went over all this literature. Where these people, they totally nitpick neuroscientific research, and they choose things that say you don't have free will. Once certain things fire in your brain, you're basically determined to do certain actions. We talked about this earlier. He's appealing to the same thing. That is not the majority of the neuroscientific world. Well, I guess I shouldn't say majority, but that's not the conclusive evidence of neuroscience or science. Science has not disproved the self. The philosophy of mind has not even answered the hard problem of consciousness. We do not have any answers regarding consciousness. So when Rupert Spira or Daniel Ingram are going to tell you that they know how consciousness works or where it comes from, or the fact that really it's all an illusion, no, they cannot prove any of that.
True. Not that science is necessarily right about everything, but there is this sense now that is very different, that the stream of intentions once clearly perceived, that precede phenomena like I'm going to think a thought. I'm going to think a thought. And that happened before I said thought was the intention to say it. And it was the intention to say the thought or whatever. And so that right before things happen, I'm going to move my hand.
Now, guys, remember, you're listening to an ascended master here. He's telling you what it's like to be enlightened. So please get your notepads out, write your notes down. This is what it's like to be enlightened. It's the realization of the intention, and that I was going to think a thought, and then I thought it, and that intentionality. I think Edmund Husserl dealt with intentionality. That's the whole basis of phenomenology. But that intention, that's what I'm aware of now. I'm aware of the intention. I know that I'm no longer the intention. That's an illusion.
And towards the camera, or I'm going to pull my hand back. That sense of, you know what you're going to do before you do it, right? But it turns out that intention stream is not actually a separate controller. That just, if you pay more attention to it, you notice it's just arising as a stream of things that happen naturally like everything else. And then the sense of the controlling agent eventually is seen through, and it turns out that is better. So it seems like you'd lose control or freak out, or who would you be? No, actually, it just feels much better, regardless of your ontological assumptions. And then there's a sense of like a mental impression that follows things that really seemed to be a knower, right? So it really seemed that I was in here somewhere knowing things out there. But that's actually, curiously enough, not even what science says. So the scientific model is that this...
Well, then that's interesting, Daniel. Do you know the things you're saying right now, since there's no knower? How do you know that you don't know, Daniel? How do you know that you're enlightened? How do you know that the awareness of the intentionality of your thoughts is the differentiation between you? Do you know that? How do you know that? You just said, well, science has said that there really is no knower. No, science hasn't said that.
This is all sensations in a brain somewhere, that there is no true red or blue or flavors or textures or whatever. These are all highly filtered, highly processed impressions that have to do with, photon energies and, the average kinetic.
So because color is related to light photons means they don't exist? No, they definitely do exist. And the human body and the human eyeball is uniquely attuned to see them and experience them as real things. What?
Resonance of molecules that gets interpreted as warm or cold or whatever. But warm and cold and colors don't actually exist. They're just the ways a mammal somewhere creates this impression of the world. And that happens to be true of all these sensations and even the brain. So we usually think that ends here and this is the real thing. No, science says this isn't even the real thing. Like all of this is impressions in a mind.
Oh, Daniel, tell us, what does science say is the real thing? What's the real thing, Daniel? I want to be enlightened like you.
Somewhere, and we don't know where that mind is. So, but that's how this entity appears to function. So by starting to notice mental impressions, we're actually just more sensations. So for example, if I go, and then you remember that, it turns out the thing you're remembering that sounds like a snap, but is actually vastly more sort of silent and transparent, and your memory of the snap, and you try to play it back in your head, doesn't sound like the snap exactly. It's different, right? And it turns out the first incidents you heard of that snap happened right after it. So there was snap, and then there's this mental impression that was much like it. And we kind of miss the first one, except we think it is the knowledge of it, right? We think that it was the knowing, that the thing that happened after the snap that we play back is actually the mental knowledge of that thing. This is the observer, the knower. And so it turns out that when you get your attention more clear and refined and precise, you start to notice, wait a second, the mental impression of a snap is not the same. It even occurs in a different place usually. It sounds different. It's much more quiet.
So because your memory of the snap is different than the snap, okay, obviously. What? What?
It has a sense of sound to it, but it's like imagined sound rather than sound. So it's not quite the same. And
yeah, it's not sound because your mind, your thoughts don't make sounds. What? How do people hear this stuff? This guy's claiming he's enlightened and telling you what it's like to be enlightened right now.
We take the echo to be the knowledge, the consciousness, the awakeness, the presence, the subject that is observing. Except that if you just learn to pay attention better, you notice that's not true. And so it was actually just by...
If you pay attention, you realize that the subject of awareness isn't real. What? No.
Increasing by the mental resolution by very straightforward techniques to be able to perceive this fine-grained aspect of what was happening in experience, it became very clear that in fact you've just got sensations that occur, and some of them appear to be an observer but actually aren't, and some of them appear to be a sense of past, but actually the thoughts of past occur now. And if we totally buy their content of past, we think there is a true past, rather than just noticing that was the thought that occurred now as an experience. And same with future. So when thoughts of future occur now, we generally think, oh, that is a true future. And we operate on it emotionally and cognitively as if it is, which is very useful for things like object permanence and planning and learning from the past and all that. But experientially, actually in this moment, you can actually realize all thoughts of past occur now, all thoughts of future occur now. All sensations of this present moment are actually too transient to be a stable self that stands outside of causality. And it just turns out that the mental transformations that happen as a result of that process just happen to feel a whole lot better. And you can call it enlightenment or just some curious trick of increased perceptual speed and clarity and all of that came from straightforward meditation techniques to increase the precision and clarity about all of these things. And it becomes just like anything else. So, for example, like there are people who could, when I first started playing guitar, like trying to make a G chord, it was like I thought I had some kind of movement disorder, right? It's like, ugh. And now I make a G chord effortlessly. Or trying to play my first scale, dun, 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 was really painful, and now I can play scales easily. In the same way, you can learn to perceive sensations much more quickly and easily, and then eventually effortlessly, and they just become part of the clarity that results from just sensate clarity that you cultivated, with the sense of space and time's permanent things being seen through, the sense of a separate stable self being seen through.
Oh, I love that. I am God said Plato left the cave and Buddha went back into it. Well, certainly Daniel did. Certainly Daniel went back in the cave. I mean, it's just total nonsense. I mean, I feel like a broken record because we just keep criticizing these guys for the same damn thing. But what is this? What is this? So because you can learn how to play the guitar, because you can become more aware of sensations and thoughts, it means that the self doesn't really exist, and that memories and thoughts of the future are just total fake illusionary phenomenon. Everything, time and space doesn't exist. It's all right here in the now. He became the scale. Yeah, pretty much. But you guys, again, the reason why, again, I'm so thankful. Shout out to Gordon again for sponsoring today's stream. The reason why I think this is so important is because this is so appealing to people, right? The host, this Joseph Everett guy, who's, again, I don't know anything about these guys except for prep for today's stream. Like, people are so gullible that they think this stuff is real. That's why philosophy, even though it's not for everybody, it's so freaking useful to have the right categories to understand experience, to understand worldviews, to understand the nonsense that spews out of these people's mouths.
That is what we're talking about when we talk about awakening, at least in the tradition I come from.
Interesting.
And at least in the tradition that I come from, you can call it enlightenment. You can call it awareness of sensation. But I'll tell you what, it just feels good. It just feels so good. It just feels good. I'm a Daniel. There's many Daniels. I was an ER physician. I was an ER doctor. I did this. I did that. I mean, there's multiple Daniels that are here with you right now. There's not just one Daniel in the room, okay? There's multiple Daniels here. And in my tradition, enlightenment just feels good. It just feels so good. It's just when you feel the consciousness, this pulsates through your body. The consciousness pulsates. And when it pulsates, I just realize it's not me. It's not me pulsating. Alan Watts said it's me. It's me that enlightens the sun. It's me that shines the stars. And in my tradition, it just feels so good. It's so freaking good. All right. I promise you guys, I am not going to make you suffer any more of this Eastern mystical nonsense and all this Anatman stuff. So that's pretty much going to wrap up much of the stream. Smash that like, guys. Thank you all so much for the support and being here. As I said, from a philosophical perspective, the Anatman theology that's present in Buddhism, present in the New Age, present in the spiritual but not religious, and in the psychedelic, psychonautic spirituality, it has no epistemology, it has no metaphysics, it has no grounding for ethics, aesthetics, or soteriology. It correlates with much of the errant trajectory of modern philosophy and Western secular ideas, and correlates with some of the neuroscientific research. And in that sense, this whole worldview takes on a sort of scientific validity by the people who promote it. Notice almost every single person we talked to appealed to science except for Alan Watts. He just wanted to let you know that you are the one shining the stars, and that the blood pulsating through your body is the same thing as the rivers flowing around the world. There is no difference. You are the consciousness doing both of them. No, you're not. So we listened to a few Buddhists. We listened to the Dalai Lama. We listened to Alan Watts. We listened to Rupert Spira. We listened to Sam Harris. We listened to Daniel Ingram. We pretty much got the full spectrum experience of the Anatman New Age spiritual milieu. And so, as I said, this worldview is self-refuting. It's epistemic self-refutation. It's a moral contradiction. It's a ungrounded anti-metaphysical system. And in that sense, the question of whether the worldview, again, I said this, the no self is a lie. That's how I titled the stream. The question comes down to, is morality real? Is it objective? Is there a self? Is there what we would call substance ontology? Is there metaphysics for being? And is truth objective? And how you answer those questions, the only way you can adopt the Anatman worldview, as you say no to all those things. You say there is no moral objective reality. There is no metaphysical foundation for being, and there is no epistemic justification for knowledge. And if you claim all that, then your mind can be warped far enough that you will hear what we just discussed and went over today as somehow enlightened spiritual teachings. So anyways, thank you all so much for the support. Some guy said, I didn't know much about Buddhism before this, but I know that their metaphysics are trash and they can't make ought claims whatsoever. Yeah, exactly. They can't. They can't. And really, if you're enlightened, you'd realize that there's no one actually asking the question for epistemic and metaphysical justification or moral justification. Is ought distinction? So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. God bless you all. Again, a major thank you to Gordon. And I will see you guys in the next one. As always, until then, God bless.